Day that we're indeed. And welcome everyone to the start of a new year. It's the first set Corso competition, the championship of the year. We've been kicking off in race room quite a lot actually. 2 F4 races done, 2 TCR races done, which have been enjoyable to watch. I think 1 or 2 of those were streamed. I can't remember how many I did in the end, but they were good fun, and hopefully you checked out all the action over there. But of course, back to ACC today at Brands Hatch, as we have been with the Race Room Championships a couple of weeks ago. Both F4 and the TCR Championships went to Brands Hatch. Of course, we're going to go here with the GT3s here in qualifying. Short session, 20 minutes long. We've already had the first 5. Let the cars get out on track, and of course our first few laps on the board as well. Joined with me is Case, who's normally streaming this. It's my turn to stream the event this time. My poor PC is going to have a heart attack by the end of this, but we'll see how it goes. But Case, we've been talking about random stuff for the last however long, but get to talk about cars once again. It's been a while.
Yeah, that it has been. It has been a while since we've been in here and been able to do this together, and have to be able to do it at least once during the year of 2023. Really get this in, and I don't know how much I'll actually be around for the rest of this year with these events, so I'm glad to be able to at least get one in here at the start of the GT Championship. Brands Hatch, very fun track in my opinion. I mean, this is one of my favorites in all of racing. You really can't beat it in terms of the thrill and roller coaster effect that it gives you, and to be able to put all of these GT3 beasts on the racetrack around here, it's gonna be a fun one. It's very unforgiving, and we hope to see some excitement occur.
Yeah, as you say, Brands Hatch, it's classic British circuit. It's tight, it's twisty, good elevation as well. Some, relatively tricky corners. I mean, if you put this on a flat circuit, the corners aren't that difficult, but the elevation around this track adds such a dynamic to each of those corners. I mean, if you put turn 1 and turn 2 here and just put it on the flat level ground, right hand corner into hairpin, pretty basic. You look at a track map and you just see tightening radius right into a hairpin, not that exciting. Then you look at it, big drop down the hill, and then obviously up the hill into the hairpin. It's certainly a good circuit, great for spectating as well. Grandstand at the end of turn 1 on the outside of the circuit, great vantage point, especially if you're on the Indy circuit. Basically see the entire time. It's a good place to be.
Yeah, and as you're mentioning with turn 1 and 2, you also have to pair in just characteristics of curbing, right? This track's got a few different characteristics with its curbs, both on interior and exit corner or curbing. For example, in turn 1, that interior curb, it's quite tall. It's really unforgiving if you hit it wrong, and it can send you right off. But at the same time, hitting it correctly gains you a ton of time, especially in cars like these GT3, where they are rather big and heavy cars in comparison to most vehicles that have raced at this track in its history. And so taking these cars around here, and again through turn 1 and 2, you really want to try to carry as much speed to the apex as possible, because these cars can't just make that tight radius turn like as if it's nothing, like say some of these Formula cars may be able to in comparison. And so you want to try to get tight on that curb. But then on the exit, you have this kind of flat level curb that kind of gets some runoff, but then there's always gravel that gets brought onto it throughout the race. Just people who get out a bit wide, they'll drag that gravel onto it. And then you also pair with it, there's that mesh like astroturf that's there that can kind of draw you off the track. And right in the middle of the curve, right at the bottom, there's just a solid bump where the car bottoms out. And if you are on the curb the wrong way at the wrong time, it'll just straight line you almost like a hydroplane in water off into the sand as well. So very much like you're mentioning, on a flat surface in a basic track, nothing special there. But whenever you add in the roller coaster like effects of the elevation here, it really just it transforms this track into something that is truly special, in my opinion.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's a classic, and that's why over the years a lot of European championships, when they do decide to come to the UK, they end up going to Brands Hatch. DTM did it with their Class 1 cars when the GT World Challenge Europe comes to UK, they come to Brands. It's the place to be, really. And although Silverstone is the crown jewel, you could say, that is very good for one type of race car, and we all know what that is. But if you want to take that, yeah,
high downforce race cars.
Exactly. And it works at Silverstone. It's a great track for those types of cars. But if you wanted to take them anywhere else in the UK, I'm thinking Donington, Snetterton, Brands Hatch, Alton Park. Not going to work with an F1 car. I mean, come on. Never going to work. Not even with an F2 car.
Love to see a Formula One car hit those inside curbs at Alton Park. Try to hit that chicane and catch that big sausage curb on the inside and smack into a tire wall.
Wishbone gone straight away, yeah. No chance.
That'd be very fun. Those would be very expensive
and
would never happen. It would be fun to see a Formula One car try to rocket around this racetrack, though, with the way that the elevation change. And again, I keep on using it to describe it, but it's what it is. The roller coaster elevation changes. I mean, in a Formula One car, the G-forces would be immense here. It would be pretty much like going up Eau Rouge every time you take a corner.
Yeah, I've only ever seen demos around to the F1 car. Last time I saw one a few years ago, I think it was David Coulthard, Red Bull. I think it was either 2011 or 2012 car doing the demo runs down there, and he was stuck right in the middle of the circuit. That guy was practically terrified to touch anything that wasn't tarmac at this. Even on a demo run, I don't think he was going near the curbs. Obviously, it is a demo run; he's not going to be pushing it, but he was still just not really flirting at all with any sort of limits. And yeah, trying to see a car that would go full pelt around Brands Hatch would be quite something. It's scary enough seeing them in the British F3s or the GB3s that they're called now. They're one of the quickest cars we have, and they're pretty speedy. They're up there with the GT3 cars, but they're that much smaller and that much fragile that even they try to stay clear of the entry curbs. There, especially turn 1. No one wants to be touching that.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously we have, all of these circuits around the world that have been updated, with FIA Grade 1 to be able to get to those safety standards for the Formula One cars where they feel comfortable having them run around. And, this is one of those tracks where it hasn't seen any of that. This track is very much kind of in its original state. I mean, obviously there's been some safety improvements made. There's been some, changes to the barriers and changes to the curbs, but at its core, this is still, a track that resembles all of its old school characteristics, and I think that in most drivers' eyes makes it just that much more charming and appealing to want to drive, want to show up, and want to be a part of and support.
Yeah, and that being said, I mean, this is a bad thing to bring up, but one of the most recent deaths in motorsport comes from Brands Hatch, with a marshal being killed at turn 1 with a car going over the catch fence, and that was I think in August, September time last year. So even though, as you say, safety's come up, as it would, but there's only so much you can do around a track like Brands. I mean, Silverstone was an entire airfield. You've got a lot of space to play with here. Whereas Brands Hatch, a lot of their existence was the Indy circuit, just a small little circuit to go have fun with. And then they decided to go tear down some of the forest, which they're going through now. And also you can see the trees lining either side. It took a big commitment for them to extend the track, and even doing so, they put themselves into a corner straight away, because it takes so much effort to clear that kind of land space. And yet there's what much more can you do? Because now they're in a protected area, so thanks National Trust. So they can't take down many more trees, really. They've got to try and keep it the way it is. And yeah, they're backed into a corner. You can see the Armco and the tire bundles. They're not far from the track. Bit of gravel, bit of grass, sure, but on a wet day, if anything, that's probably worse, because you're getting sent straight to it. You haven't got a lot of room for error.
Yeah, absolutely not a lot of room for error. And again, yeah, in the wet, even more so, because you catch the grass in the wet and it's just going to act as if you're on ice. I mean, it's really just going to drag you out and pull you towards the walls at that point. And yeah, there's not a lot of room to go out there. There's not a lot of room for you to catch it. There's not a lot of room for you to, even if you do begin to save and go away from the tire wall, I mean, you're going to quickly be right back into the racing line. And so there's not a lot of room for error, as you mentioned, around this racetrack. And it just makes it all that much more exciting. You pair it with the high speeds and the intense FOV you get with those trees. You know, just the sense of speed around here is immense. And then yeah, you pair it with the fact that it's definitely not a non-dangerous racetrack in terms of racetracks can go. Obviously, they're always dangerous anytime there's vehicles on the racetrack, but in terms of safety, it's definitely not at the top of the list. That makes it all that much more charming and fun to be around, and especially in the Sims where safety isn't such a concern, makes it all that much better.
Yeah, it's certainly a fantastic track to watch, to be at. Great little venue indeed. At the top, though, it's coming into the dying stages of qualifying. 4 minutes to go. We've got David out there in front, the 54 McLaren, just beating over the 63 and the 30 there. So tie at the top, and then we do have a bit of a gap there to the rest of the field. Rusumov, Slatnik and Hall there, which are tightly bunched together. And then again, another group. So we've got 3 sets of 3 there, almost. 7th, 8th and 9th relatively close. So it looks like we're going to have some pack racing here for the next 2 hours, because we've got some defined groups already forming, but the top 3 very close, 3 tenths of a second there, but they do have a margin over the rest of the field.
Yeah, I've been watching the McLaren here through the qualifying session, and the car just is hooked up around here, and it kind of is fitting to have a British car on top at the British racetrack, as well as Bentley in second, so another British manufacturer up at the top. Seems quite fitting, and yeah, that McLaren is hooked up and can ride those curbs like they don't exist. So seeing him on pole at the moment is not surprising for me. Seeing Porsches up there actually is, though, that mid, in quotes, engine that's pretty far over the rear is truly not going to help you too much over the elevation changes of turn 1 and on the back half of the racetrack, where, you know, just the wrong clip of the bump, and that car is going to want to go around and possibly end up backwards into a wall. So quite interesting seeing the Porsches be so prevalent in terms of car choice here and towards the top of the grid.
Yeah, 2 of them up there, both the 30 and the 22. So as you say, they are a tricky car to sort of get settled, but once you do, there is a car which has been proven in pretty much every GT championship to exist at some stage. It's going to be pretty powerful. I've watched Jason Jennings there slam it into a barrier.
That is exactly the comment I was mentioning there. With the elevation change, you get a little bit upset, and the car just goes straight into the wall. That's what it does. That's exactly what I was saying. Thank you for queuing that up for me. As the Bentley goes top there, fastest on the charts now, new pole sitter. Big boy Bentley.
Have a chance for a few more laps. Yeah, big boy Bentley. There's a lot of weight to hustle around there as they pull to one side, and I assume back to the pits at some point. There we go. So that is their qualifying done. So there's only a few cars out there that can still improve their chances. But yeah, the Bentley pulling a lot of weight there, a lot of mass to get around those hairpins. So pretty good job there by Phillips to get that onto pole position. I don't think anyone at the moment is on a good lap.
The wider frame of the Bentley, where it has the long wheelbase, it has the width, it has that little bit of weight where it's kind of a bit higher on its center of gravity. That kind of helps it go over the curbs, though. And as we're mentioning with this track, how tight it is. Every little bit of track you can extend on entry and exit. I mean, that's a lot of time to find around here. Every little bit of extra speed you can carry to the midpoint of the corner is just going to make it that much more faster and that much more stable. and so that could be playing into the Bentley's hand here around Brands Hatch.
So 30 seconds left on the clock then, just 3 cars out on track, so we'll be following the 243 to begin with first, as they'll be the first to cross the line obviously. Tad wide, come out to the back stretch, and again tricky. I mean, all these corners, they're all sort of awkward in their own way. There's no one easy corner around here. There's a bit of a mistake as well at the end of the lap there for the off-pace racing driver Alex, and yeah, seemingly struggling a little bit in qualifying at the moment. And I think they have invalidated it because I've lost timings on him as well. But yeah, every corner around here has got some nuance which you've got to find correctly. Even the hairpin's a little bit annoying because it's not flat, it's still up on the hill, and hard in the wall. I wondered why that popped up.
He was pushing the limits absolutely all the way there, and kind of got a little bit off the racetrack coming into the final few corners, and then decided to really try to cut the apex at the fast right-hander, third to last corner. I can't remember its number exactly in order. But decided to really try to cut that corner, and the Porsche went airborne and off into the grass, and at that point it was a lost cause. Lap time invalidated, and it was hard into a wall. So that was the party done for Rusumov in that 22 Porsche.
Yeah, as soon as that happened, the timing screen all came up, and I'm thinking, there's still cars out there, what's going on? Yeah, click to the 22 and it's unhappy, should we say. Not in the place it should have been there, but bit of an interlude, 4 minutes then, for them to get themselves sorted. 2-hour race, so 1 pit stop. It's pretty self-explanatory, really. It's a elongated sprint. Got 1 pit stop there, 1 change of tyres. Just drive like hell, I guess, is what these drivers are going to be doing. It's just going as fast as they can whilst keeping it on the track and not in the barrier.
Yeah, it's 2 hours. I mean, as you mentioned, it keeps it pretty relatively straightforward, and it's going to be a fun one for these drivers. The Bentley on front, it's going to be interesting to see how that gets handled. With 3 minutes until the race starts, I think we can take a quick break. Let us go and make sure we're situated before the race starts, and be back ready to watch the cars roll and be ready to take the green flag. Cool with that, Dom?
Let's do it.
All right, we'll be back in about 3 minutes' time.
What's up, guys? This is Rob. Probably know me a little bit better as TypeShift than Rob, but today we're going to be taking a little bit of a deeper look into kind of behind the scenes of TypeShift and go over some of the very incredible stuff that we have coming up very shortly. So about 2 years ago, I was a senior in college and I had the idea for TypeShift in between 2 classes. Since then, I think we have created one of the better communities out there as far as this stuff goes. You guys have been literally the lifeblood that keeps this stuff rolling, and with that, we have brought some pretty special items here to bring forth to you guys. As a car guy and as a collector myself, there's a lot of shared commonality between you and I. I've met people internationally and here in the United States that share the exact same passion that I have with this stuff. Most of the things that are available on TypeShift are either forgotten about or just kind of lost through time, and now they're getting a second look on life, bringing back into the homes of enthusiasts, homes of collectors, garage art that starts up a conversation. Everybody's got a connection to all this stuff, one way or another. With the recent collection, we're scaling up a little bit. From the traditional 8.5 by 11 single frame and dual frame pieces, a lot of these are going to be bigger format, more substantial pieces of history for the TypeScript collector. On top of framed vintage pieces, we've got a lot more wearable items, and these are incredibly special. These are not for sale anywhere else other than TypeScript, and if they are, they're not nearly in this good of shape. These are official Camel GT 75th anniversary t-shirts. Some real deal, usable and wearable vintage motorsport nostalgia. Perfect condition, no pit stains, no oil stains, no rips, no tears like you've traditionally seen. Tons of Camel stuff, tons of vintage t-shirts from all sorts of race events throughout the 80s. Some of the coolest stuff that's been available on the TypeScript storefront. For the 90s DTM fans, for the Camel GT fans, anything with box fenders, huge wings, and incredibly wide magnesium BBSs, you guys are all in for a treat.
Oh, we have a missed start from our pole setter, who will be starting from the pit lane.
Wow.
That's spicy. Didn't expect to see that one happen.
That's a big error. Straight off the bat. They had 5 minutes, man. 5 whole minutes. What were you doing in that time, dude?
I mean, we gotta hope that they're not still in the bathroom at the moment.
Yeah, well, that means it'll be David in the 54 who will lead the way in just a moment's time. But yeah, unfortunate for 63, and they're going to be held as well until all those cars have gone past into turn 1. Only then will they be released. So they're going to be 5, 7, 10 seconds, maybe even off the back of Perkins there in the 73. Who did not qualify, and I think just managed to get into the server in time. So well done him. Or did qualify? No, he did. Not sure what's happened to Perkins, because he was up there with one of the other Porsches, I think. Or maybe they're just...
Yeah.
Oh, I think they're just sort of melding together, doing the weird ACC thing.
Oh no, it does have Perkins listed in 11th for me. On the leaderboard, and yeah, last I remember he was up there in I think 7th or 8th with Marriott in the other Porsche. So that is interesting that they are now listed in 11th. Curious case as to why that is, or if that is just something with the formation lap being a bit odd at the moment. Coming down 2 more corners, getting ready to take that green flag, and group's got to tighten up and get into that double file. Ready to take this one down into turn 1.
Yeah, they should be going 2 by 2.
Except for the first row.
Yeah.
The pit lane start for the Bentley.
Indeed, so it's going to look a little bit odd. They're at the front. Now McLaren is going to be all alone, but has been able to get himself over to the right-hand side. Which, I mean, is defending thin air, but... still, should be a little bit better. You can see the Bentley down there on your left-hand side, which will have to wait until everyone goes past the pit exit before being released. So wait for those green lights. Away we go then. There's a good start by Keishan Hall there, Aston Martin, looking to the left-hand side. Nowhere to go, though. So we make our way then down into turn 1 for the first time. Seems to be in the mid-pack.
Wow, the first 7 rows there, or through the first 7 spots by the time they got to turn 1, nobody wanted to take it side by side.
No, everyone's just trying to find their feet. Looks like Diego there.
In there at the back between Kronk and Thoris in the Mercedes. A little bit of door checking, but through they have moved.
Yeah, steady start then. Everyone, yeah, as you say, quickly into single file. It's good to see. Looks like Phil Perkins here trying to put Dupanov under pressure there, the 73. Which I think got itself back into position before the start started. So I think that's just an error from ACC, or maybe because you can move through another car on the formation. I think they were just having a bit of fun, maybe. Not too sure. And of course, the 63 released. They're 5 seconds off the back of the 243 Mercedes, so that's the margin they've got to get. But of course, poleman shouldn't be too much of an issue to get up to the back of the pack. But as you said earlier, Case, tricky track to overtake around here, and they've got to find the space without going off the track there.
Yeah, and obviously, I mean, ACC has its track cutting penalty system that is in the game, but it's not really of a worry here because the track will penalize you more than the game will for the penalties. We have a send there up the inside back for 5th place, and a move done there. Daniel Zlatnik takes it away from Dan Marriott and into P5 now. So running order is McLaren, Porsche, Aston after 1 lap and a couple turns. And I see Zlatnik, so far the fast mover, he's already closing down the gap towards Keshan Hall after a couple more corners are completed. Maybe a move for the Porsches up here in P2. Looking around the outside, Rusimov, that's a bold one, goes on the switchback.
Whoa! No, the 2 Porsches. No, come on, guys. Oh, that's not good.
Back onto the racetrack. Good
Oof.
job getting that to lock down and not come right back into the racing line. But yeah, going for the switchback there, and the Porsches, looks like he lost a little bit of control on the changeover, and it just ultimately ended up with contact. And very unfortunate for both cars there.
Yeah, but good from Rusimov there to hold the brakes. That's one thing we had to reiterate a little bit last year, but good to see. You see the car sliding back there towards the track, but yeah, all locked up, and good heads up driving there from the 22 after the crash. Maybe not so much heads up before the crash, but it happens. Unfortunate for both these drivers. Rusimov staying out, going again. You can see clear damage at the front of his car.
As is Jason Jennings, who also goes by the start-finish line. They're now in last place. Maybe a little bit of frustration in play there as to reason not to pit. Now making a quick move here of the 243 Mercedes and throwing it out of the way. We pretty much seem to just let him through. But yeah, we got to monitor those cars and make sure that there's not too much damage on them, and make sure that they don't cause other issues in the future. And Dan Marriott now finds himself inside
under
the
pressure.
Podium. He makes a move back on Zlatnik and is in front of the Aston.
Yeah, I'm not sure why he's been able to do that, but good pace in the in this Porsche, but wide through the right-hander. Back goes the Aston Martin. Lamborghini not quite able to follow through there, but early action then in the first parts of this race. Phillips and 63 Aussie making this way past those two back markers, I guess you could say now. The 243, I did see a chat put in by Alex saying that the setup was throwing him off every lap there, as back down the inside goes the 34. So issues between both of these cars here. Clearly neither of them wanting to be in third place, allowing those front two, Keishan Hall now 6 seconds off the back of the McLaren, and then another 5 seconds ahead of the Porsche. So those two cleared off ahead, and is a three-way fight there. They're side by side in the background as well. I think that's Perkins trying to go around the outside, unable to do so on the Ferrari of Dupanov. But good battles there in the opening stage of the race.
Yeah, move made there for Zlatnik going into the hairpin a little bit later on the brakes, takes the inside. Ferrari way off on the racetrack.
Whoa, into the... Oh, ouch.
And now we have Dan Marriott around 2. Oh, that's a broadside hit. Oh, that's not good. Just keeping it locked, trying to get it moved. Can they out of the way? Oh, and the Ferrari makes contact as well.
Bit of a car park there.
Just a little bit. Really nowhere to go there for Marriott once you're kind of stuck on the racetrack. There's nothing much you can do. Obviously, you don't want to move and be unpredictable, but at the same time, sitting still is not a good solution either. That's just a bad situation. It was made worse there with the continuing contact, and very unfortunate to see more cars get caught up early in this one. But now up front, we see with the podium fight, it went from being a handful of cars down to just 2 now.
Yeah, the mistake
Now we
there,
have
166, Joe Cronk, their penultimate corner's gone wide, and Danny Phillips is trying to go to the outside at the 22. Unable to make that work, but it looks like he's got the move on the BMW done. Yes, he has. Yellow flag as well, final corner. I think that's Dupanov in the Ferrari having further issues. He took 2 whacks there, first on the right-hand side into the barrier, and then hitting one of the stationary cars as well, just 200 meters later. Hits another car, so that's, yeah, unfortunate for multiple cars there. Both the Porsches now in the pits. Then I think Dupanov as well joining suit. Yes, he is. So they're in for their damage repairs. Unfortunate for them, but hopefully they'll be able to get out not too far down off the rest of the field. It's a short lap around here, so it doesn't take a lot to go a lap down here either.
Yeah, especially whenever you already consider, like you were mentioning, I mean, there was already 12 seconds between first place and that battle for third, and so you put in that 12 seconds plus the time you're going to spend in the pit lane and the time you spent, wrecking. I mean, now at this point, you're definitely looking at risk of going a lap down, even more so if you're looking at changing tires or anything else like that due to a puncture or flat spots. So, yeah, we see here leader coming by, putting them a lap down on that front straightaway.
Yeah, there we go. And I imagine they're going to go a lap down to Hall, to Zlatnik, to Gliardo as well. I don't see any sign of
5th place as well. None of them rolling. Oh, there goes one. Moving down the pit lane now. The 73 will be coming out. Perkins looks to not fall too far behind.
No, it's, yeah, world of hurt for the other two then.
Phillips here looking for 5th place around the outside of turn 1. That's a bold move. Porsche up the inside, tries to keep it.
Does so.
Risky to ride those curbs like that, but he does pull it off.
Yeah, I feel like GT3s and GT4s are possibly the only cars that could even touch that curb there. I mean, when I was streaming over on a couple of weeks back for the TCRs and the F4s, even though this is a race from a different game, it's modelled relatively closely, and those F4s, you can't touch the curb coming into turn 1, or otherwise you do get spat 180 degrees the other direction. TCR's a little bit better, then it kicks you up onto 2 wheels like TCRs like to do, and then you've got a different issue there entirely. But GT3s, they're quite capable of taking a lot of curb. We've seen it in real life as well. You have a look at Monza and they're all over them in the chicanes. But yeah, as you say, you don't want to be there. It's just because the car can do it doesn't mean that you should be doing it. And the mistake there for Rusimov 63 looking to the outside, nowhere for him to go, will get shown the door. Here comes the second Porsche, the number 30. Will he try to shape a move to the inside? No, it looks like he's going to stay behind for this time. But yeah, that curb at turn 1, you hit it in the wrong place and it's almost game over.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, as you're mentioning with the GT3 versus F4, obviously a lot of that's just down to suspension, right? An open wheel car versus a closed fender car. With the closed fenders, you have a lot more suspension options you can do for that vertical travel, and that really allows these cars to take more over the curbs, even more so whenever you pair in that they have more weight. So the little bit of an upset with that vertical travel doesn't necessarily throw the car off like it does in those Formula 4s, and even a TCR to an extent with its front wheel drive drivetrain. And so definitely GT3 is going to be the most capable over those curbs of the tracks that come, or of the cars that come to this track, except for maybe if there's some semis that drive here.
Sometimes they do.
Is the Bentley, but again,
tried it.
Kind of reminded me of a TV American threesome. You have the big ol' car in the middle with 2 slim down Porsches on either side. To kind of doesn't seem to want to remain in the middle though, and he wants to get out of there and trying to challenge for 5th position. But every time he makes a look, gets a good run up off the corner with that mid-engine Porsche, and just nothing that the Bentley has to challenge right at the moment.
Yeah, there's been several occasions now that Bentley has looked for the move outside into 1, outside at 2, tried to go to the inside there at the top of the back straight as well, but just not quite able to have the confidence to actually make that move. Gets alongside, gets a nose down the inside or whatever, but yeah, just doesn't quite have the final sort of 10-15 meters that he needs. And even with a mistake, there's been a few mistakes here by Rusumov early on there. You can see the Porsche's clearly pushing on quite a lot here, even with the variety of mistakes that's been looking here to the inside. And this can be interesting with the lapped car ahead. Shouldn't be an issue just as yet, but to the inside, and there we go. That's the extra 10-15 meters we wanted there for the 63. Gets it down the inside. In fact, that lap car is off to the right hand side. The Porsche's off as well in the background, just about gathers it up. That was a bit spooky.
Another big time save right there from Jennings, because
yeah.
I've already seen now a couple cars do that same exact move and end up nosing into the wall. So to be able to pull that car back straight, even more so whenever you have the Mercedes off track kind of catching your eye, that was a very solid save there from Jennings to keep the car in the right direction. Gotta watch and see if this gap can now close between Phillips and that Lamborghini ahead. Geraldo is off goes Rusumov deep into the wall. The camera kind of cut there. I didn't quite see them break loose, but deep into that outside barrier for the Porsche, and now slow down the front straightaway as the 34 and 538 are both off the racetrack at two separate incidents at the moment.
Yeah, looking at that, the track map, not quite sure what's gone on there. Where they've done sort of had like a sympathy spin together, somehow both realizing that they're both having their own moment. But yeah, looking in the background there for the 22, it came in very quick. So I'm not quite sure what went wrong there, because the angle was just a bit weird. It's almost like they didn't bother turning for the corner at all. So unsure what's happened to the 22. Definitely has a substantial amount of damage. You can see it there. The front bumper is not looking all too good. So whether or not they can hang it out for another 50 minutes, I mean, that's a long time before the pit stop. Whether or not they'll have to come in like those others did just a few minutes ago.
The hood / bonnet over the front of the car, even though the engine's in the rear? Or would that be the trunk / boot area?
Trunk / boot. It technically is the trunk or the boot, but I don't know whether or not we dictate by that or not in the UK. I think we just say bonnet because it's at the front and trunk because it's at the back.
Yeah, that's typically what I go with as well, and what I've always heard, but I don't know quite how Porsche fanboys like to call it. You know, they can be picky about some of that stuff. But the latch is on the front seems a bit loose because the hood / trunk, whatever it is, on
the frunk,
of that
as I've heard
Porsche,
it called.
it is kind of bouncing as they go up over curbs and such. You can see it kind of twitching a little bit, and so not fully fastened. And again, as you mentioned, that shows that front end damage that this car definitely does have. But trying to hang on to his Rusumov, just get to the point where maybe an hour 15 left in the race, you can maybe think about pitting and get it to the end. We've seen these cars run 70-75 minutes before. You really got to kind of baby it to be able to get there, and so maybe that's their goal, is to try to get to that hour 10, hour 15 mark and not have to double pit, to not go that lap down. I mean, as you're mentioning, that is huge around this racetrack, but at the same time, I mean, if you're losing 2 seconds a lap, a second a lap, and consistently, on the edge of wrecking, is that really worth it? Because you're simultaneously going to lose that lap just simply by driving.
No, exactly. So it's that way up of how much time are you losing, and how much time could you lose if that car is now a bit more uncontrollable for whatever reason. The risk of you spinning or putting it into barriers has gone up, and do you want to risk it, or do you just want to pay the 1 minute fine as such to make sure your car is repaired, and then you can carry on like normal? But it's
Meanwhile, up front, not to completely interject here, but the battle for third is heating up. Geraldo has closed the gap down by about a second, and meanwhile Phillips has closed the gap by over 6 seconds in that same time. And so we're about to see a battle for third here between 3 cars.
Yeah, looking at
those
those previous lap times, it's a 27.6 for Zlatnik, Geraldo on a 27.3, so 3 tenths quicker, and then Phillips on a 24.9. It's actually the quickest lap of that previous lap. So yeah,
I mean, on a different planet. I mean,
quick.
You have up front, and then McLaren with the 25 won there that last time around. The only one who's even broken that 25-second barrier is those two.
Mm.
Everyone else is 26.0 or slower. So the time difference is just night and day between those two. And obviously we saw that in qualifying as well. And once again, it's showing up in the race here, and already to the rear bumper there for 4th place. Phillips
look to the inside, maybe. I thought it was going to be a move to the inside there from the Bentley. I'm surprised he didn't go for it, but yeah, those lap times are stark indeed, and those
way
two.
Late on in turn 1 there from Zlatnik. He didn't get on the brakes
Whoa!
until after the apex of the corner.
And wide into turn 2 from the Lamborghini. That just gifts the Bentley P3 there. That was P4. No. Yeah.
But yeah,
Mass.
definitely, I think just cracking under the pressure there, seeing that big Bentley grill just shining up that rear view mirror and just deciding, I want nothing to do with this, and overdrove it a little bit. But definitely not ideal, because what you would want to do, obviously, is if you do get them past you, is to stay up on their rear, kind of learn from them, be able to go a bit quicker yourself, then also be able to take advantage of whenever they fight with Zlatnik here in about a lap's time, 2 laps time. Be able to try to take advantage there, but will not occur as they are now a couple seconds down from the back of Phillips.
Yeah, I think they're going to lose a bit more time as well. Loads of marbles, they even went into gravel a little bit as well, so certainly would have taken the rest of this lap to get those tyres back into a full working condition. And that's, yeah, as you say, it's dropped them off the back of off the Bentley, so they can't learn, they can't judge their braking points and their turning points as well at all, because they're way too far back, of course. And maybe they might be able to regain a little bit here as the fight is about to begin then for 3rd place, and we'll see where Phillips decides to go. Bright pink Bentley, it's you can't miss it, not due to the size or the colour, it's just, yeah, combination of both.
It's definitely playing into the hand of the fact that it's a big car that fills up the mirror, and then you make it bright pink.
Oh yeah, distraction, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely playing into your advantage, and I absolutely agree with it. I would take every advantage that you can get, and painting this Bentley a big bright color like this neon pink that it is really makes it stand out, and only plays into possibly causing things like what happened to that Lamborghini there last time around. The night and day difference there down into turn 1, I was riding on board with Phillips. I mean, he was a full 30 to 40 meters later on his braking point down into turn 1, and then Zlatnik took turn 1 as 2 different braking points, kind of broke into the corner and then let it roll, and then broke again past the apex, where Phillips, you kind of let it roll in on that late break, get really aggressive with it, and then just let the car roll the corner until the exit. It was very interesting seeing the difference between the two from that onboard perspective. And I'm curious to see if that is where a move has to be done, because it seems like that's where the biggest difference is between them on the lap.
Yeah, I've just seen what you're on about there, riding on board again with Phillips, and seeing the brake lights of the Aston Martin. It came on 3 times there into turn 1. It should just be once, and maybe twice as a feather, just to get a last bit of rotation if needed. But it came on 3 times there for Zlatnik, so clearly not confident with the braking ability or the tyre grip in the car. Again, wide here into 5 as we go up the hill there. The braking performance of this Aston Martin is nowhere, not happy at all, not even defending there the inside as Phillips goes to the right hand side to come back up the hill. Then that should be 3rd place done and dusted there. Yeah, no contest really from the Aston Martin, who's clearly lacking confidence on the brakes there.
Yeah, definitely Zlatnik seemed to have backed out of it once the Bentley was alongside. Just kind of left it off, let him have it, don't take it side by side, don't put yourself in a bad situation. And we see there how that's played out now. I mean, it's already a few tenths down within 2 corners, and Phillips now going to try to run and close down the gap to Keyshawn Hall up front, and maybe get himself up in the 2nd where he should have been, despite missing the race start. Meanwhile, 20-second gap between the leader and 2nd place, and that seems a bit insurmountable whenever you pair that with the 10 seconds we have here. I mean, that's 30 seconds for him to try to close, and I doubt that's going to happen unless he really pushes in some just out of the nowhere type laps, because up front 124.8 last time around, and pretty consistently in that low 25, high 20 for rain, so I don't suspect that there'll be that much time gain between those two. So barring mistake or some bad traffic, I think that Sirexi and the McLaren's got this one pretty well done and dusted at the moment. Keyshawn Hall is again just about 10 seconds up the road. It's only a couple corners, and so we could see this gap continue to close. Last time around, their lap times were competitive, but that was including having to make an overtake for Phillips. So we'll have to see what their lap times are this time around when they both had a clean track.
Yeah, I think Phillips is almost on track for another 24 lap time of 1 minute 24. It's going to be a high 24, I think, or either that or a very low 25, depending on this final corner. Whereas for Keyshawn, we're looking at a 127. We'll have a look then as they come across the line, and it's a 127.1 Keyshawn Hall compared to Danny Phillips, which is going to do a 124.9. So, yeah, 2.2 seconds quicker is a lot on that lap. So I'm not sure if Keyshawn made a mistake there somewhere. I would assume he did, because he was 1.2 seconds slower than his previous, or than his actual best. So it must have been a mistake out there for Keyshawn. But yeah, that gap is going to come down 63 to the 33, and Ferrari's off there on the right hand side. I think just keeping out of the way. No, ooh, that was close there. The 583 there turning in on the 63, I think gave him a bit of a scare there. That Bentley was definitely worried for a moment there. I certainly was.
Yeah, that was definitely a bit too close for comfort, but fortunately for Phillips, he drives on the right side of that car, and so was able to judge that gap a bit better, I imagine, maybe react to it a bit quicker than if you were on the left side of that car. So that was one of the times where being on the opposite side actually came into an advantage. Only a few times that occurs. A 243 off at the hairpin and has returned to the garage in that Mercedes, just not happy with the car and is elected to retire it.
Yeah, that's unfortunate there for 243, but they did say they were having issues with the setup, whether or not that was made by themselves or given to them by someone else, not too sure, but
it looks like Jennings got through on Giraldo for 5th place while trying to get by that Ferrari. Traffic just caused an overtake there. Not quite sure what happened. The gap really extended. So I wonder if Giraldo was just kind of scared to pass the Ferrari, wasn't going to try it, and that allowed Jennings to really close up and then make the overtake because he was just going to be more confident in the process. While the 583 is back onto the pit lane again.
that gap now under 8 seconds, second and third. So Phillips rapidly closing in again on Keyshawn Hall. Another 3 attempts taken out of him that previous lap around. So yeah, I would expect that gap to turn itself into a battle at some point during this race for sure. But Keyshawn Hall, not one of the easiest guys to get past, so should be a good fight there in his favoured Aston Martin. I haven't seen him drive an Aston Martin in ages. He calls himself AMR fan, and he's been anything but for the last, I don't know, year or so. So I'm glad he's back in an Aston Martin.
Yes, he's been quite more consistent in Ferraris among other cars whenever he's racing. He has not done a ton of GT3 racing,
True,
that I know of. But it is nice to see him back into the Aston Martin and a big, powerful engine up front. It's a V8 inside this car, I do believe. An AMG V8, similar to the powertrain that's in that Bentley, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, they're all from the same family. You could say same with the Mercedes AMG, all the same family, just a slightly different variant of each other. But they all sound pretty good. We like GT3s. GT3s sound good.
That they do. They do have good sounds. They have good grunts. GT4s, on the other hand, they sound,
a bit.
That BMW.
Oh, the new one.
GT4 BMW. That thing sounds so bad in person.
Yeah.
iRacing is the only game that remotely captures the annoyingness of the sound of that BMW. It's the only game that gets it even remotely correct, because it is just annoying sounding. And you can hear it from so far away. Like, it can be on the other side of the racetrack, and you'll hear it over the cars that go by. But speaking of cars you hear from a mile away, man, that Mercedes GT3, that thing is so loud. It is absurd. Like, literally, whenever we were at Indy, we're sitting on the pit lane, and we can hear it braking and downshifting for the left-hander at the end of the back straightaway. While cars are going by us on the front straight. Like, that thing was so loud, it was absurd. I did not quite expect that. But yeah, and GT4 is a wide variance in the sounds. Same with GT3, but GT4 especially, like, our Supra is just so quiet. Like, you would have no idea that that is a race car with how quiet it is in comparison to others. I mean, you can barely hear it whenever it goes by you on the racetrack. Same with the GT4 Porsche. It's actually rather quiet. I was surprised. It's got a iconic noise. It does stand out, but it's a very muted noise in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, GT3s, they make a pretty strong, pretty good noise.
Yeah, I guess that lack of power, you could say, in the GT4s, the smaller engines detuned a little bit. They just haven't, they're not giving out as much. So yeah, naturally they're going to be a bit quieter. But yeah, GT3s, they do make a good roar. Although most of the engines over the last 5 years have sort of come standard a bit. V6s, V8s. A lot of people have gone down that route. It's just the Lamborghini and the Audi, I think, which are left as V10s. Possibly. Don't fact check me on that.
V10? I feel like we discuss this every time we have one of these races.
Possibly. I always felt like it stayed as a. I'm gonna Google. I just typed in Google into Google.
V10 or is it a V8? I know our Toyota's an inline
4.
6.
Oh, is it 6? Wow, I didn't think they went that far.
It might be an inline 4.
Pushing the boat out.
I think it's a 6, but I know it's an inline engine, which is interesting. Audi has a V10, Lambo's a V10. Okay.
Where do you find that?
Again, I feel like we discuss this every time, and every time I insist that it has a V8, or my opinion flip flops every time. Like one time it's a V10, one time it's a V8.
Yeah, 90 degrees V10. Look at that. That's on the Evo too. So yeah, that's a brand new one.
That's a very common talking point for some reason.
The safety concept meets LMP1 crash requirements. Good to know. Thanks, Audi.
Wait, a GT3 meets LMP1 crash? What?
This specific, I don't know if all of them do, but according to Audi, the energy absorbing aluminium and CFRP crash structures, front and rear, safety concept meets FIA LMP1 crash requirements. Why? Why doesn't it meet GT3 requirements?
Yeah, like...
I don't care if it can survive an LMP1 crash. Can't even go that quick. We don't even have the LMP1 anymore. Weird that they would rate... I don't know why they would put that in.
Now, if it was a Ferrari, that would make sense. Because then it would be worried about getting run into by an Audi or something like that.
Yes.
An LMP car, it'd be worried about running into them or getting run into. But the Audis, they never had any issues. They never get run into by LMP cars.
No.
They always get out of the way because they're too slow. Maybe it's because of the fact that they're carrying around all that extra safety equipment.
Yeah, I guess.
They're so worried about being strong and safe that it makes them really slow.
Yeah,
I'm amazed by the cost range difference amongst GT3 and GT4 cars. Like, it makes sense. Like now I think about it, but like at the same time, like
also doesn't
really. Yeah, I didn't really think about it. Like, I kind of expected most of the chassis to be like I expected there to be differences. Like, I expected Ferrari to be more expensive than, just BMW or whatever. Like, I expected that, but at the same time, I didn't expect it to be drastic. But like,
yeah. Whereas like
I don't know
Audi is
exactly
one
what
of the
the
most
GT3
expensive. At least in the
Yeah.
European markets, the Audis are, you're looking at 400 odd thousand euros for an Audi, maybe with some spares and whatever, but still, you're looking at 400, whereas you can find a McLaren or a BMW quite happy for high 200s, maybe low 300s. It's a big range.
Yeah, our Supra. So in GT4, the reason why we run the Supra is basically because it's the cheapest.
Fair enough.
That's basically the reason why we run it. And like, cause he wanted to go with the Audi originally. That was the car that he wanted to run, but the Audi per chassis was like $385,000 US.
That's for GT4 as well. That's crazy.
And yeah, and that was just for the chassis. That didn't include any extra spares. It didn't include anything else. That wasn't like that wasn't including technician services. Nothing. That was just the chassis. Where we just purchased the Toyota Supra Evo chassis. I think it just got delivered a couple days ago, actually. It was $260,000 for the Evo chassis, and that included spare bumper, spare wing, spare rear hatch, spare hood, spare wheels, like at $260,000. Plus Toyota, granted, it's not very good support. They're pretty much useless, but they do have support. Like they have a support trailer at every track. They have where you can just go get spare parts if needed. You have a hotline directly with a person that works with Gazoo Racing and such. So like they at least kind of care. Where it seems like, from what I understand, Audi like does not give you anything included in buying the car. Like you have to pay them extra to do everything else, and so it's like, no wonder you don't see any Audis being competitive on the racetrack. I wonder why. And I can only imagine what some of these other. I imagine McLaren's probably pretty expensive as well, which is why you don't see it in terms of GT4 anywhere.
Yeah,
so I imagine
true.
that those cars are probably 400+ thousand for the chassis.
Yeah, well, they cancelled the program last year anyway, because the new Atura is coming out this year. So there was that. Lotus are bringing out a new car in GT4 as well. Imagine that to be on the cheaper side, I would say. I'm thinking along Ginetta. Well, Ginetta is just the cheapest. If you want to go GT4 racing, find yourself a Ginetta. You won't be quick, but you'll be there. Which is unfortunate, because the Ginetta released a new car last year, and it wasn't good. But it is cheap.
Come back to this conversation in a minute. I do want to focus while we have
Phillips
on the
is cool,
racetrack.
yes.
Filling up that rear mirror is that big pink Bentley. It was now looking to the outside of Keyshawn Hall. I mean, I'm wired on board with Keyshawn, and man, that mirror was full of big pink Bentley. I mean, you could see nothing but it, pretty much.
And yeah, actually electing to defend as well. And I said that Keyshawn will defend this, and that he is most certainly going to do. At least I hope he's going to do. It'd be a bit embarrassing if he just leaves the door open at some point, but I don't think that will be happening. And yeah, they're a bit wide from Keyshawn, but stays defensive. He's going to have to go around the outside now in the 63. Surely not. Nah. Runs out of road pretty quickly there. Catches that early on. Gets it all gathered back up. But yeah, called up now to the back of the 33. It's still a big gap though to the 54, which is going down the back straight now. That's how far ahead they are in the McLaren. And yeah, whether or not Phillips, if and when he gets past Keyshawn Hall, can actually catch up to the 54, I very much doubt it. It's too big of a margin, and they are too closely matched. So it's a shame that the 63 had to start from the pit lane, but I'm sure they've had a bit of fun working their way up the field.
Keyshawn, definitely one of my personal favorite drivers to race against and run against. Overall, me and him have very similar driving styles, where neither one of us are necessarily the fastest in terms of just solo qualifying pace. But whenever it comes to, you're in a race and you're in a group, we both can adapt and react to each other really well. We both like to defend, and we both have good car control for the overtakes. And so He's a very fun driver to race against, and as long as you're one of those people who doesn't get frustrated at someone who doesn't just let you pass them, definitely it's an enjoyable battle. And so I don't suspect that Keyshawn will make this easy, as you mentioned. I mean, we're already 2 laps into this fight, and still not getting by as Phillips, despite being a second and a half faster. Shows just how much a good defensive driving can do in terms of slowing down someone.
Yeah, he's picking all the right places. I can see on the back straight every time he just moves to the middle of the track. He doesn't even go full defensive. He doesn't have to, because he knows if he just moves over half a car width to the right hand side, he's got it covered off, and then he can move again if he needs to. But Phillips obviously, probably, as you say, frustrated a little bit. It's just because Keyshawn is doing all the right things. He's slow in the right places, but make sure he gets a good enough drive off the corners to make sure he has that straight line speed into the next braking zone. We'll see here again. I imagine Keyshawn Hall's just going to do the same thing. Just stay to the right, just a little bit more than he has to. And yeah, there he goes. Gives the room on the outside. Doesn't block it off fully, but still to the outside for the 63. It's not going to happen. And he sure tries it. To be fair, a valiant effort there from the 63. But again, another right-hander. Unless you can do the over/under, easier said than done. Doesn't work out this time for the Bentley. And yeah, Keyshawn just putting the Aston Martin in exactly the right place. Isn't really costing him all that much time, really. He's not slowing up at all, really. He's just taken a slightly different line, and it's enough to make sure the Bentley can't get past. It's not like he's hogging the inside line and braking super late or super early to, aggressively defend. He's just in the way, really, which is exactly all he needs to do.
While you stay on that fight, I'm going to watch back here 4th and 5th now. Once again, Jennings is up to the rear end of Zlatnik, so they're going to be on a hot fight as well. As you mentioned with defending there, taking the middle of the track, something I see a lot of people do kind of as a mistake, if you will, in defending is they will, really defend all the way to the inside of the track and then try to kind of curve back before the corner. And that's really generally unnecessary.
Exactly, yeah.
Especially for a corner such as that, that fast right-hander at the end, that they're not going to stick their nose up your inside. They're just not. They don't have the room to. And if you're the car, if you're the car in the lead and you move to the right, then the overtaking car has right to kind of squeeze you. Like, you've sacrificed that track, so now they kind of have the right to run the middle instead of going all the way left. So they can kind of squeeze you into that tight, uncomfortable situation that you don't want to be in. And so it makes it very, very much like you take that middle of the racetrack and you kind of force them to pick a side. You kind of get the advantage if you can squeeze them wherever you want to, because just simply you're in the middle. You get to choose where they don't go. And by the time that they make a move, then it's kind of too late at that point, because then you can just kind of push them out on corner exit or corner entry. Meanwhile, Zlatnik had a lockup down into the hairpin and kind of missed the corner, allowing Jennings through. So into P4 is the Porsche, breaking up that 1, 2, 3, 4 for the British cars. Sticking a German up top there.
Yeah, it's a bit of a slide from the Bentley into turn 1 there, trying to get the outside of Keyshawn Hall, unable to do so. And then just in the transition, the compression down the hill, and then as they went back up, it obviously loaded up the Bentley just a bit too much. The rear came out a little bit, gathered it all up, lost no time, still on the back of the Aston Martin. But yeah, just a bit of a wobble there. Shows that Phillips is pushing here. This isn't an easy pass. We saw maybe a little further down the order, some of the passes for Phillips were not pedestrian, but they were a little bit easier. Whereas this, he's having to try and figure out here how to get past Keyshawn Hall. You saw that, trying to do the over/under, and no, Aston Martin's still in the way.
Yep, he was trying to do that over/under, but again, that's one of those things. Keyshawn kind of sees that coming, so he doesn't take full speed through the apex of the corner. Doesn't let it drift out wide. He kind of keeps it in the middle, both on entry and exit. And yeah, it slows him down a little bit here. I mean, Keyshawn is losing a couple tenths a lap in this fight, but overall, the time that's being lost is really on Phillips' hand, not Keyshawn's hand here. And,
yeah.
I mean, eventually, it's one of those things where eventually Phillips is going to get through, right? You're not going to hold this defensive position for an hour and 20 minutes. It's just not going to happen. Eventually, Phillips will get through. But you got to keep it fun and, hope to maybe get Phillips out on a mistake where he tries to get too aggressive on an overtake and then makes that mistake, and then you get a few laps, kind of get a breather, and then he catches back up, you defend him again, and then maybe eventually he makes a pretty drastic mistake and goes off the racetrack, and now you've earned yourself P2 and warded him off. That's the big kind of hope of defending driving like this, is that you are you're trying to basically force a mistake on the car that's overtaking you, in the same sense that as an overtaking car, how you kind of peek your nose in but then back out. You're trying to force the mistake on the car ahead, have them go off the racetrack, have them make it easy for you. You're kind of doing the same thing in Keyshawn's position, where you're just trying to get Phillips to make that mistake, dip a tire off in the grass, and kind of just get out of your mirror, not have to worry about it. Keyshawn flashing the Ferrari up ahead. Gonna have to use it as a pick here just a little bit. Keyshawn stays defensive. Sacrifice that outside line again down in the final corner. It's not impossible for the Bentley to keep it as he
No, he's got a good job here.
Stays on the quarter panel, stays at the door. He's going to carry the speed there from the outside line. Let's see if he can power it down into turn one.
It's going to be tricky here for the Bentley. All that mass there to try and lug it around the outside. Gets caught on the curb as well. Then to do 180 degrees on the outside again. Tricky to do so. Not going to be able to do that. Ferrari was using its indicators to indicate right there. So, good job, Dupinov, using your indicators. Well done. Appreciate that. I feel like no one does that, but that was nice to see from the Ferraris there. Having an excursion in the background. Kept out the wall, just about. But they're obviously exploring out there. And yeah, Bentley gets a good drive coming out of this corner as we go up the hill. But even with the power of the Bentley, just not enough to get past the Aston Martin. Trying to duck in the slipstream, looks to the outside again. This is attempt number 5 or something now, and neither of them have worked, and not working again this time around. Yeah, Kishinol just putting it in the exact right place every time. And as you say, not costing him too much time. And I think Kishon knows that he's not going to be catching the 54 unless there's a major incident for our race leader. So he knows that this is the battle that he needs to focus on. Because he knows he's quicker than the rest of the field, but not quicker than the 54. So this is where he's got to be. This is his fight. 63 again to the outside. I think next time the 63 should not try and over and under him, but not follow the outside line through the final corner. Should duck in earlier, because the road, it falls away from you through the final corner. You can see that the car's having to scrub off a lot of speed through that final corner. Oof, I think that's the closest they've been. A little bit of a touch, possibly, between those quarter panels, and it is close. Kishinol doing all the right things.
And again, it's worth noting, Keyshawn, he gets his background in drifting rather than racing, and so that definitely plays into car control to some extent. He was very used to, putting it on a spot and having to hit that spot over and over and over. And obviously you do that in your standard racing as well, but it's kind of different to just pick the mark on the racetrack to hit. And Keyshawn's got tons of practice in that, with the car being sideways, so whenever the car's pointing straight, it's just that much easier for him. Definitely pulling that now, and you can see there, Scott for Bentley, it's starting to wiggle. You can tell that Phillips isn't just kind of lying there. He's trying to get it. He's pushing his limits. He wants that position as much as he can get it. And there's a good run here. That gap, I think, going to kind of help him. But again, he's looking to the outside here at the final corner, and as you mentioned, the track falls away from you. It's really hard to stay there. Like, you really got to get it right. He does that time around as well. Saw this a couple laps ago. Can he keep it on the outside of turn 1? It's going to have not quite a nose ahead, so this is Keyshawn's corner. He backs out and goes for the foot back. Keyshawn misses the apex, and that's going to be the move, I believe, unless Keyshawn dives him back up the inside, which he does. He's going to challenge him again down into turn 4.
Opportunistic from Keyshawn. Yeah, the wiggle on the exit's going to cost him here. The next chances are at the top of the hill after this left-hander, but yeah, just diving too far deep there into turn 1, unable to do anything about it, and yeah, he's already lost a few car lengths there now, and I don't think he'll be close enough for the slipstream that will allow Phillips to stretch his legs once again and go back into those 24s which we've seen him do. Maybe not now in this stage of the stint, but they've been running in the 26s for the entirety of this battle, and we know that the 63 is obviously a lot quicker than that. But 6-7 laps there, all fended off the 63, so that is a really good job there from the Aston Martin, to be honest. And that's what, as you said, just in the end pressured into a mistake, and it was just one little outbreaking event, and Keyshawn didn't even go off the track. You know, he just went a little too deep into one corner, tried to come back at the top of the hill, almost did. That almost worked for him, but yeah, Danny Phillips there getting the traction out of turn 2, able to keep second place then.
I mean, definitely that was a mighty defense from Keyshawn Hall, but I mean, that was also a impressive showing of patience from Danny Phillips to keep that Bentley under wraps. I mean, again, we saw it wiggling, really struggling. He was giving it everything he had, but at the same time, wasn't forcing anything. He wasn't trying to go up the inside, up at the top of the hill. He wasn't trying to go up the inside at turn 1. He wasn't trying to, really force something that wasn't there. He saw what Keyshawn was defending, and he was trying to do it, the other way. He was trying to go around the outside. He was trying to take the space that Keyshawn was giving him. And so that's a very mighty showing of patience to not force something, make contact occur, and put both these cars into bad situations. Instead, there's a major twitch there on the exits. But yeah, just keeping the car, clean, keep the noses clean, and both of them do continue on straight. And we're getting to the point now where we might see pit windows open up pretty soon. The 166 is on the pit lane, in fact. And I would suspect that within the next 10 minutes, all these cars probably hit the pit lane to swap these tires off and go into something new.
Yeah, you can see the Bentley throughout that battle just trying to push it over the limit, and Keyshawn never did. I don't think we actually saw a single slide from him, maybe some poor exits here and there, but the rear never broke loose. But the 63 broke loose multiple occasions, and that may have set the tires just a little too far over the edge. But obviously, as you say, 10 or so minutes left on this stint anyway before they come in at the halfway point, so it shouldn't be too bad for Phillips here. Can just bring these tires back into the window and bring them home, so that shouldn't be an issue. And yeah, bringing that gap out to 1.5 seconds now. Made that 2.2 actually. Bad first sector. Yeah, stretched his legs and away he goes. A 125.6 for Phillips compared to a 26.2 for Hall. So yeah, over half a second slower that time around for the Aston Martin. You can see the Bentley is clearly pulled away. Is a while back from the 54, but that being said, we never know what might happen. Still 70 minutes left in this race.
Yeah, pit lane errors are always a possibility, especially with this tricky pit entry here. There's the chicane that kind of heads into the pit limiter. It's kind of tricky to know where the pit limiter is, and so we could see perhaps one of these cars go down into the pit lane and speed, right? And if you get a speeding penalty, as we've mentioned, it's super easy to go a lap down here, and so we could see this tire flip-flop really, really quickly if you have to perform a stop-go or a drive-through for any reason in particular. And so definitely got to be mindful and careful on the pit entry. I would say, obviously, for that McLaren, I mean, we want to just play it safe, right? Sacrifice a couple seconds on pit entry to ensure you don't speed. Like, you have this thing more than in the bag. You don't need those couple seconds. You can throw them away to ensure that you don't cost yourself 30 or 40 seconds. Because then that's whenever really now you're worried about Phillips being back in the hunt for it. So take it easy, take it slow, and don't put yourself in a bad situation. Meanwhile, Phillips, obviously, he's going to be in a position where he wants to get everything he can. He wants to be in as good of a spot as he can be to take advantage of a perhaps mistake, an uneventful happening up front. And so we're going to see him push everything he can. Maybe that plays back into Keyshawn getting ahead of him in the event of speed penalties or track cuts or just a general off track.
Risk versus reward. Basically, everyone's equation every single lap is how much you're going to push it into every corner, into every braking zone, into every acceleration zone. There's how much can you push that throttle, or that brake, or the steering wheel, or whatever. Sometimes all three at once. And, you know, you've got to understand how much that car can take. What is the limit in that situation? As you say, coming into braking zone for a pit stop, hitting that pit limiter is, it can be fractions over. You can save yourself a couple of hundredths of a second, maybe. But if you're 1 kilometer over, you've just lost yourself 20 seconds. There's a short pit lane here, but just trying to gain that last little bit extra under braking, it can cost you so much there. And it's, yeah, risk versus reward. Running on board here for the last half a lap here. I'm going to follow the 54 around just to see where he is pushing and seeing what those lap times, or where that lap time is being gained relative to everyone else. You can see a bit of scrubbing on the front through turn 2. Imagine those front tyres are not feeling too happy. It's I wouldn't say a high deg circuit, but we've got a lot of corners here which do demand a fair amount from those front tyres. I'm thinking turn 1, turn 4, turn 5 at the end of the long straight. And
6, 7, 8. No, I mean, I would say
yeah, that
those
entire
are
right
very
section, yeah.
demanding. Including, I mean, I would even say in turn 2 on the braking, right? You're going up a hill, really loading up the weight as you're braking, and then you're getting it to turn into a 180-degree corner. So I would even say that there's a good amount of strength and time there. Obviously, most of the corners being right-hand corners, you know, you're really going to bleed into one side of the tire. And a big wiggle there.
Well, yeah, it's 3 corners which go to the left, the rest go to the right. Like, there's not a lot of opportunity for those tyre temps to come down, especially that the start of the final sector, the quadruple right-hander after a very quick right at the end of the back straight. That front left tyre is unhappy.
I noticed this in qualifying as well, and I believe you guys just watched that on the stream as well. Coming down the front straightaway, every single time, he kind of squeezes up.
It takes a short
onto
line.
the pit lane, and then pulls out and takes a wide angle into turn 1. I kind of wonder why that is in particular. I wonder if it's something with visuals. I wonder if, you know, it's for lap time purposes, right? Taking that short line gets you a better like lap time at the checkered, but surely making that cut across the racetrack.
It's got to affect the next lap over, hasn't it?
Yeah. I am kind of curious as to why that is. Maybe it's to almost simulate another left-hand corner to try to even out the tire wear. I don't know. You know, like it could be some big brain strats going on in that, but it is kind of interesting because I don't notice anyone else making that same line, really taking it tight and keeping it right on that wall coming across the start-finish line. However, it's obviously working. You know, consistently. You know, running good laps right up front, one of the fastest cars on the racetrack, and has been the entire session. But it's interesting. He keeps it tight,
And dance over.
Immediately back to the left.
I can only assume there's something within the elevation. I think that's what he's eyeing up there, is that the elevation makes sense. If you keep it low and then dart up at the end, maybe, when you've gained that extra speed in the straight line so you can get over the elevation quicker. That makes sense in my head more so than it does when I said that out loud. But he is quickest, so there must be a reason for it. We'll try and find out one day, but they don't do that in real life, so, well, not to the same extent to which he's doing, so not too sure.
Definitely to an extreme. I'd be curious to see how he would handle turn 1 in a fight, or if he was having to overtake somebody. Like, would he stay to the left?
Yeah.
Would he try to force his way up the inside, or would he try to make that same move, either in an attacking or defensive state? I am definitely curious as to how that would be attacked at turn 1 with the car in front. We may just see it come up ahead here as the 583's off final corner, catching up to the rear end of this Lamborghini of Geraldo. May just see what it looks like down in turn 1. Rejoining the track now is that Ferrari, the 583.
This could be interesting. what happens here. But yeah, again, darting to the inside, then back to the out for the 54. Whoa, almost caught out by the slow. Rejoining Ferrari there after their off-track moment. A bit deep into the hairpin, but gets that second apex. It's certainly a interesting corner, that turn 2, is a lot of people dive in early, but then just as many people seem to miss the first half of the apex, come in for the late one, try and get the run down the hill. You do have a little bit of camber on your side, especially in real life. It is, although it flattens out, you've still got a bit of a bank going down the hill, so it does sort of swing you around a little bit. So you do have choice. It is interesting to see what choice people make. The Lamborghini sort of doing the whole parting of the ways thing there, getting out the way of our race leader. I think Jennings is closing to Keyshawn Hall. I mean, that's 5 seconds. I think that's closer than I remember it being.
Jennings was last time around a full second faster than Keyshawn Hall. So Keyshawn's tires possibly really, deg down after that defense that we saw. And so we're seeing the aftermath of that as he's falling off the back of Phillips and allowing Jennings to close that gap more and more and more as they go. Jennings actually was faster than our leader last time around. Meanwhile, Phillips obviously still the quickest on the track, but traffic does play a part in that. 1 hour, 2 minutes remain in this one. We're closing in on the halfway point. It's been a green to now lead for Navid. How would you pronounce that correctly? Storexi?
Whenever I see an accent on a letter, I freak out because the British side of me does not know what's going on with that. So, like,
yeah, because
does that make it a harsh A or like a soft A or?
Well,
What's it mean?
Some languages treat those differently too, and not knowing
Exactly.
in particular where he's from makes it all that much harder for how to know how to pronounce that. And, it definitely makes it a bit tougher, and it's something that in real life, wherever you're a commentator, you kind of get the advantage of having the media, right? You can be told what these drivers are pronounced. You get to talk to them and interview them before races, stuff like that. You kind of get an advantage of being in the paddock, where we kind of don't have that ability. But I'm going to roll with just Surexi, and then I could be corrected later. But it's been led from green to Surexi the entire time through. The number 54 McLaren making it look easy up front, just keeping it in place nice and clean. And I wonder if it's running that Fanatec McLaren wheel as well, keeping it fully on brand, or if there's something else at play. I gotta say, ever since I got Formula wheel and having that kind of shape, it feels more proper. Like it is kind of weird. Like it does feel more proper. Like I feel I have more. I feel like I have more grip, more control, and obviously having a direct drive wheelbase does assist that. But it does just kind of feel like as if I'm more in control of what I'm driving than before.
But we've seen that in GT racing now, so their wheels have slimmed down a lot. I mean, I was at ASI last weekend, and Cosworth obviously releasing their new wheel, their £10,000 wheel, and that looks like a Formula rim, like you would see on a current F1 car. It's very thin, but it's got that box to it, but the actual way you hold the wheel feels like you would of a single-seater car. It's got that sort of directness to it, whereas if you hold some of the older GT wheels and it feels like you are piloting a vehicle which is a lot bigger than what it is. So it's interesting to see how wheels have sort of developed, but especially if you have the screen on the wheel or screen on the dash, that certainly makes a big difference as well.
We'll see Keyshawn Hall, first car to make his dart to pit lane. And, I mean, possibly as we suspected, the tires getting burned off in that defense. So it's just after we cross halfway, get those tires off, get new ones on, adapt to the new track temp. We've gone up a couple degrees Celsius and get yourself situated. But now, Keyshawn already going a lap down at this point.
That is the lead of the 54. Yeah. Done a fantastic job. Still in pit road, yet to be released, and we'll have to keep an eye on Jennings then to see what they do in relation to the Aston Martin.
Keyshawn has been dropped off the jacks, and the car is now rolling, leaving the pit lane. There is the pit limiter exit mark, so he's now rejoining the racetrack. Clean air. Not quite a lap down to Phillips, but not all that far ahead either, about maybe 6 or 7 seconds between them on the road. So again, that just shows, I mean, you lose majority of a lap. I mean, we're running, 125 here, and so you spend a minute on the pit lane in total between your drive through the pit lane and your service, and so you're losing majority of a lap on the pit lane, so it exemplifies the gap that you have even more. So Keyshawn, as you mentioned, now we're gonna have to watch Jennings and see whenever he reacts to it, or if Keyshawn starts to maybe put on some speed and really close the gap down to make it where once the pit cycle has happened, that gap is bigger. The leader is on the pit lane now. Sorexi is looking to stop. Now we gotta look. Can Phillips maybe lead for a lap? I mean, this is his opportunity if he stays out to maybe get one lap led. Sorexi pulling into the first pit stall. Gap was 42 seconds. They're at the end of sector 2. Again, it seems like you spent about a minute, so Phillips probably going to gap him here by about 15-20 seconds on the pit lane.
Yeah, and there we go.
And Phillips leads for the first time. It is
someone
not
else.
At least we don't have to say that this was a start to finish lap led.
True. Yeah, that's one for the statistics, and away goes that 54 out into turn 1. Have to keep an eye on Keyshawn Hall then to see what his first flying lap is then. So he's bringing those tyres up to temperature as a 132 that time around, but of course coming out pit lane, cold tyres, bringing that car up to speed again. So he's got a bit of work to do before that 30 comes in, the number 30. You'll see whether or not he's able to extend that gap of just over 3 seconds or not. Number 17 then, Zlatnik, the fellow Aston Martin driver, into the pits. Keyshawn Hall, I don't know if he's still struggling on the tyres or not, but apparently 1 second down on his personal best, so not been the best of laps for him. Compare that to Jason Jennings, who just did a 1:27.4. Keyshawn Hall's going to do a 26.3, so my timings was lying to me. Never mind, so that's actually a good lap. So he has brought those tyres in and is using the fresh rubber to his advantage, and this might be the bit of boost he needs to just bring that gap out again to the number 30. But of course, for every lap more he does, it means that Jennings is going to have that extra lap in delta in terms of fresh tyres and putting on less fuel as well. So in theory, it should be a shorter stop as well. So it does work both ways. We just got to wait and see for that number 30 Porsche to make their pit stop.
Yeah, I don't remember how ACC handles it. I think that because the tire swap
I
and
don't know if it's
the fuel
sequential or
happen
not.
at the same time.
Hmm.
I think that the tire swap is exactly the same time as a full tank of fuel. So I don't think taking less fuel
Oh.
is a shorter stop. I think no matter what, it's 30 seconds that you spend in the jacks changing tires.
Fair enough. Yeah, because obviously in real life, you always see them waiting for fuel. As soon as that hose is ripped out, away they go. But yeah.
Depending on the series, yeah.
Yeah, sure. If it's
Yeah,
sequential, it's normally fuel takes about 40 to 45. It's in there for ages. Whilst the four poor men just run around with a handheld drill because they don't have a budget.
Yeah, those air guns, man, that is crazy. They're heavy too. Like they are not.
Yeah, they're and obviously when you actually use them, the thing just wants to twist out of your hand. So they're serious bits of kits. They are.
I'm sure the ones that they actually carry are a bit lighter than the ones, because obviously in GT4 and SRO America, we do not perform tire swaps, and so we have 5 lug wheels
Yeah.
that do not get changed. We also do not refuel either. So all of our fueling is from 20-liter fuel jugs.
Just pour it in.
Yep. And so we don't have any sort of refueling either that occurs. And so for us, the pit stop is a mandatory set time that you have to follow.
Yeah.
For the driver swap. So you must just remain stationary for a certain amount of time before you.
Oh, sorry, mistake for Keishan Hall into the barriers there. Penultimate corner just before. Coming through that quick right-hander blind.
Yeah.
Apex, wheel on the grass.
I just watched it on the replay on the stream, and you can see him literally following the tire marks.
Yeah, of
the
someone
other
else.
cars that made the same mistake there. It looked like had the Ferrari go off there. Had I think the 34 Porsche go off there, the 22 Porsche I believe as well. Like we had a few cars go off there, and Keyshawn again just following in those tire marks. Meanwhile, we have a battle for 7th place. Perkins and Rusimov side by side currently for 7th. Rusimov actually just got the position through.
Yeah, Perkins falling down there. Coming up to 63, or the 63 has probably just gone through them, actually.
The 63 came right out of the pit lane just in front of them.
Mistake there for Perkins. And another mistake.
At the moment, only 9 seconds back from Sorexi. Yeah, Perkins struggling there. Pushing a little bit too much to try to keep up on the back of Rusimov, and as a result, not staying on the back of Rusimov.
No, not any longer. Yeah, just a bit of dirt on those tires, and especially as you go through that quadruple right hand or whatever it is, as soon as you lose grip on that front left, you end up just dragging yourself through the right hand, and you just end up sort of falling off the road. Tire goes in the grass again, and it only just exaggerates the issue.
I have got to give credit to Jason Jennings here. Still running pretty solid lap times, despite being over an hour and 10 minutes now into this stint. Really only a few seconds or a few tenths of a second off of their fastest lap. Pretty well maintaining where they were in terms of pace. So keeping the tires together, keeping it clean, and it's kind of paying off right now. We got to wonder if, with Keyshawn's small mistake there, if they don't take over that position and say into the pit lane now. Pit limiter on just a little bit early there. Make sure you don't speed. Nobody's got called out on the speeding as of yet. It is interesting that they added a chicane on the pit entry here.
Yeah, that's been there for... It's been there for a fair while now, I would say. But yeah, people just used to chuck it in. Oh, mistake for the 22. They're back together now with the 73. So, part 2. But yeah, that chicane at the start of pit entry has been there for a while, but people obviously used to just throw it in out the final corner, slam on the brakes, and come in way too quickly.
So, still up on the jacks right now is the 30. Keshan Hall getting ready to come into the final corner. off the jacks now, and Jennings is rolling, and yeah, he's going to take over that.
It's going to be ahead. I guess that mistake, penultimate corner just before, is what's done it. Has to be, because he lost, maybe 4 or 5 seconds, I'd say, there. From that mistake, obviously carrying a bit of damage now as a legacy, and is only a handful of seconds behind there, the number 30. So yeah, one small mistake there, the Aston Martin, and that is it. He's got a lap maybe to try and catch up whilst the tyres get up to temperature in the number 30, but that's not going to be the gap we see here, not at all.
Yeah, Keyshawn, I would say, needs to be another, second and a half closer. Maybe a second, because the gap's a second and a half. So another about a second closer.
He does need to be a second and a half quicker. That's true.
Yeah. If he was kind of within 3 or 4 car lengths, he could be in that spot where you get the toe down here, and then you take advantage of the cold tires by just making a lunge, right, and just know that they're gonna back out because they can't keep it stuck. But Jason Jennings jumps into P3 there through the pit cycles. Well done by the Porsche team there.
Yeah, gonna have to keep an eye on the lap times now. I don't think the damage is substantial in the Aston Martin, just cosmetic. Bit of a tap on the wall, and as we know in sim racing games, even if you put on realistic damage, you can get away with a lot. I think iRacing's getting there. I think they're probably one of the closest. But in a lot of the games, you can really abuse racing cars, and they're fine. They just bounce back. It's all okay.
Yeah, for sure. iRacing is definitely getting there. The unfortunate part with iRacing's damage model is iRacing's netcode. It doesn't quite help all that much, but yeah, you can definitely get away with a lot in terms of racing games and simulations. And obviously, that's a topic that is kind of debated and kind of heated whenever it comes to the sim racing community, because some people say that it's because of the devs, not one put in the work. Some say that it's because of, PCs not being able to handle intense damage models, which I think is a fair complaint. It's the same reason why the new Microsoft Flight Sim does not feature a damage model. Instead, the screen just goes black whenever you crash, because it's basically because computers were dying, and especially because they're trying to build the game for consoles. The Xboxes were dying whenever there was damage, and so in effect to protect the consoles, they made it where there was no damage model that would be animated. Then the other thing that we kind of hear from some dev teams, and it was one of the things that held iRacing back for a long time, is licensing.
That's the issue with the Formula 1 games as well.
Yeah, simply put, companies don't want their car to fall apart because it doesn't look good from a marketing standpoint. Whenever you're trying to sell cars and you're trying to make them look good and strong and sturdy, whenever you go and you see them in a game get beat up in certain situations, and maybe in one extreme crash one car holds up better than the other, well, now you're running into issues of it looks like one car's unsafe, and so that licensing thing kind of makes it where they just mute all the damages that cars take, to where it's kind of more just generally cosmetic and kind of just percentage values that get damaged rather than like physically the car tearing up. And as a result, cars tend to continue to drive pretty well, even with a really good smack into the wall. Which is unfortunate, but that's why you get games like Wreckfest where they can't have any actual licensing in it, but then you get a good damage model.
Yeah.
Well, BMG as well.
Good old Wreckfest. Yeah, well, even BeamNG is a interesting game. It doesn't have... it has everything right, but also not at the same time. If you want to go race a car on BeamNG, impossible. Car just doesn't understand that. But if you want to crash a car on BeamNG, yeah, that's fine. It'll shatter into a million pieces and it'll look great. But it's more so their tire model, and they are aware of it, is that it just doesn't behave like a tire. It's very good for sliding, which is what you do in that game, to be fair. Not really good for traction zones, but Keyshawn hasn't dropped back here, still in that 1 second bubble. Got a little bit close a couple of laps ago, not able to make anything of it, but just staying in the mirrors. Now, and it is going to be the fight for the podium, so it does mean something. You'll get sent a bronze trophy JPEG by me if you get it. Which I don't know. I guess I'm going to have to do that now I've said that. But, yeah, final step on the podium, so hotly contested. And, yeah, good stint, really, by the 30. To go the extra distance, he went, 5-6 laps longer on tyres which are fading. Done a good job then, obviously aided by the incident that Keishan Hall had, but that was only worth 4 or 5 seconds, I'd say. So, yeah, Jason Jennings done a good job there to get himself into third place. There's the 73 into the pits, along with the 583 and the 166, which has been there for a while, that BMW.
Yeah, Jason was running quite a bit of consistent lap times there that were right up on pace with Keyshawn. As I mentioned, as his tires were digging down, he was only losing about a half second a lap. So he was being quite consistent over the length of that stint, which has resulted and allowed him to overtake this position. I mean, we saw Keyshawn continue to lose time in the battle and then lose time because of the tire dag and that small incident on the exit. And yeah, it just really was kind of compounded to letting Jennings slide through into the podium. As we have 2 more cars in the pit lane here, the 73 and the 583 once again coming back in. 42 minutes remaining in this race. 9 cars left circling around the circuit. Up front, the lead continues to grow. What are we looking at? It's just over 50 seconds, almost 53 seconds up front between Sorexi and Phillip. So
comfortable margin.
Yeah, generally a pretty comfortable margin. I mean, almost a full pit cycle there.
Mm-hmm.
Next up on the Zolder. That is next month's round. February 25th, 2023 is the 2 hours of Zolder. It's wild that it's already 2023, and we're already almost through a full month of 2023.
I know, right? That is ridiculous. I feel like these last 5 years have just sort of blinked. I honestly don't know what I did in 2019 or 2020. Can't remember. No clue what happened to that so much of my life. And then COVID for 2 years, and now we're here. Life. There's a pretty good calendar we've got coming up. So, Brands Hatch now, Zelda next. March takes us to Suzuka. April takes us to Imola. May to Zandvoort. And then finishing off in June with a 2.4 hour. So, a little bit extra. An extra 24 minutes of racing at Spa. So that's going to be a good little finale.
It's always good to have a championship setting at Spa. It's obviously a beautiful, iconic venue, and the long laps with the big slipstream. So that's the word I was trying to find. The big slipstreaming opportunities. A drive-through penalty for
it's going to be track limits.
We were talking about it at the top of the hour, or at the top of the race, I should say. That it's kind of a track that punishes you on its own for track limits. So really, to get 3 track cut penalties, that takes some as much as I don't want to say it, that takes some talent there from Rusimov to pull that one off. And so a drive-through penalty for track limits really kind of takes an already bad day, but makes it a bit worse after that race start going how it did, and now being a couple laps down, having damage multiple times, and now possibly going to go a 3rd lap down and be in position to fight with Perkins for 9th and last on the racetrack, basically.
Yeah, coming in straight away.
That much time, it would need another drive-through, I think, to fall that far back. But
came in pretty quick, the 22. Wasn't quite on the edge of spinning out, sliding out, but it was close. It certainly looked like they were testing the margins, and hopefully they didn't get another speeding penalty for for the pit lane. We'll have to wait and see. No, that is
Yeah, I
all
just caught that
cleared.
on the replay there. On the
Looked like they
stream,
came pretty quick. Yeah.
away. Yeah. And
Whoa! And we're off into turn 1 there for Rusumov, who's trying to regain any sort of ground to the 77, and no, went off straight in front of the leader. Completely misread turn 1, looking where the 73 is, other side of the track. So yeah, there, as you say, another drive through, maybe even 2 to be honest, to the 73 to get close to Rusumov there.
Watching Rusumov roll through the pit lane there really makes me wish that a single sim, that any of them, would make it where you have to drive in the fast lane, in the pit lane. Where you're, cause like all of them, like our factor is the only one where it's kind of like that, because the fact you actually have contact in the pit lane, and so you kind of just drive in the fast lane out of just you're scared of someone driving into you type of aspect. But like, it's not a penalty to drive through other teams' pit boxes. It would be interesting and nice to see that show up, where there is actually a penalty for driving through pit boxes and cutting the track short, right? It would be the same as speeding into the pit lane, right? It would be treated as an unsafe, pit lane.
Yeah. Imagine that. People just driving right through you. Yeah. I mean, I was watching earlier, just to kill a bit of time, the Broadbent stream for the iRacing 24 Hours Daytona, and yeah, when they all came into the pits on their first sequence, I don't know how many LMDHs it was, but they all dive. Obviously, Daytona has got a big pit entry sort of road with the apron and all, but they all dive to the inside, to the far left, to take the shortest line. Which obviously, if you could do that in real life, you would, but there's a reason why you can't. And yeah, then they all just run the pit box, or very close to the pit box, nowhere near the fast lane. They're right on the far left, if not skimming through other cars when they get to their pit stall, and that stuff annoys me.
Weird with the pit lane too, because in iRacing you can make contact in the pit lane, but only while you're in the fast lane. And that's why nobody drives in the fast lane ever in iRacing, because you can make contact in the fast lane. So why would you drive in the fast lane if you can make contact whenever you could drive in the slow lane / the pit boxes, and then you can't make contact? And so yeah, it's frustrating though, for sure, because it's like, I would really like to be able to just have it be a bit more just realistic and sim feeling.
Yeah.
To have it where you have to take the pit lane as the pit lane. You can't drive through 4 pit boxes. You have to pull into yours and pull outs, and like, it just would feel cooler and better if that's the way it was. I don't know. It's always been one of my little gripes of sim racing, pretty much since it was, like, as long as it's been around, basically.
I guess in some regard they don't want to, especially in like the esports category, they don't want to have a unfair advantage in that place, because obviously normally it's computer controlled. Like, you look at the F1 esports stuff, their pit release on the F1 game is useless. There could be a car coming down pit lane which is 2 boxes away, and the game won't release you because it's scared or whatever. I don't know what the reason is, whatever it is in the coding, but the game doesn't release you, and so you get stuck. And that's been an issue for the F1 Esports Championship, is because in real life you would have been released, but the game has held you for one car, and because it's time to put inters on, everyone and their mums has come into the pits. So now you're at the back of the queue. You've been held for everyone. So it's just like, what do you do in that sense? Because pit stop is meant to be like it's meant to be the neutral place, especially in series as you say where there are timed pit stop. That means there should be no sporting advantage gained or lost in the pit
I would say
stops.
that the solution to that is to not baby your drivers like Formula One does and make them drive through the pit lane rather than it being a mini game.
Yeah, have to turn right at the right point. It's very
Yeah,
annoying.
make it where like they physically drive through the pit lane rather than it's an AI driving and then you just turn into the pit stall and then you just turn out of the pit stall or whatever.
Yeah.
So I've not actually played the new one, I've only just seen it, but like just drive through the pit lane. Make it like every other sim racing game has it.
Yeah,
You
just drive.
drive through the pit lane.
And to be, well, I don't even know if the F1
Forza-
game could comprehend it because their pit stop stuff is so bad.
Forza actually, because they were having problems with their pit stop stuff, were like, because it's an AI that drives you down the pit lane, and it was having problems with pit stop stuff with like the visuals of it because there was no animated, no animated crew there to do anything. So your tires would never change, whatever. And you would just watch the car like magically, like just warp back into being in good condition with its damage. And so what they did to solve that was they just put up a big bar that just pops up across your screen that just tells you that you're driving down the pit lane. It shows
yeah.
the leaderboard and it shows you how long it's going to take you to get to the pit lane. And then they added sound effects in the background.
I think Gran Turismo did the same as well.
Yeah, I hate that solution as well. It's awful. But that was also like that was their solution to no contact, whatever. But like just make it like arc factor. I mean, really, that's all you have to do, right? If you just make it where there's contact in the pit lane, and honestly, I'd be okay with no contact in the pit lane. I would accept that as long as you make it where it's mandatory you must drive in the fast lane. And then I mean, the rest of the mechanics can pretty much stay as they are. It just needs to be mandatory you're in the fast lane. And then if you're in F1 or whatever, and you form an unsafe release, and you go and you pull out in front of someone, like if you don't want that, then you leave just non-contact. You say, okay, you have to drive through the fast lane. You can't make a competitive advantage by cutting short on the pit lane, but we're not going to punish you on unsafe releases or whatever. There'll just be no contact. You can just release, or you make it where there's contact in the pit lane, so then people don't want to unsafe release, right? With contact in the pit lane, you're not just going to pull out in front of someone where you might run into them. You're going to let them do their thing, and you're going to have a safe release on your own, so you don't run into each other. And then from there, unsafe release will just kind of penalize itself, right? If you release yourself, and there's a car in the lane that's turning in, you run into each other. Well, you got in a wreck. It kind of police itself. But then then you run into issues of there's not going to be a yellow, and now you're blocking the pit lane. Like, it is really annoying. There's never really a right issue, which I think for me the simplest would just be having it where it's just you must drive through the fast lane.
Yeah.
Right. Keep it non-contact, whatever, but just make it where you must drive through the fast lane. If you do that, I think that at least that would solve my craving that I want, where you just have that. It looks realistic on the pit lane, and nobody has a competitive advantage of cutting through pit stalls. That would at least solve my want from it.
There we go. You have to write that into to all the new Sims. Maybe Rensport will do it. Maybe they'll be the first.
Yeah, but then they're going to charge you for it. You have to pay extra to drive through the pit lane. Every time you make a pit stop, you have to pay for the tire.
Oh, at least like with Project Cars, you can't even go to the pit lane. So there's no issues there. No pit stops allowed in PC3. Can't complain.
They did that.
Can't complain if you can't make a pit stop.
Just block it off.
Yeah.
No, it does not exist.
Nope.
Do not pass go.
That's so funny.
Yeah, that's a brilliant solution.
Yeah. Can't argue with it, really. Coming into the final quarter of the race then, just under half an hour to go.
Does PC3 not have a damage model?
Well, I guess not, if you can't repair it. I don't know. as soon as I saw the first trailer, and then the first like critics review, and then that was it. I had read enough, and I went, nope, not dealing with that. Because I think the first critics review, it literally had the screenshot of like the pit stall being, or like the pit entry being blocked off, or some note of that, and I went, yeah, nah, that ain't happening. Not buying that. Yeah, but
You know, I've always been curious just to download PC3, just to try it, just to play it.
I wouldn't give
you
them
know.
money.
But yeah, although I did buy Project Cars 1 before it got took off Steam.
Fair.
It was like $5. It's like, yeah, you know what,
Might as well. I think Project Cars 1 was
the best one.
probably better. I think the physics of 2 were better, but the concept and the actual game of the first one was better.
To be honest, I think I prefer the physics of 1 as well. Like,
Oh,
I
no.
went back to Project Cars 2 like a week ago.
You have that launch into the sky every 5 meters.
It's
awful.
And I mean, to be fair, it doesn't help the fact that the game does not have support for direct drive wheels whatsoever.
Mm.
So that probably doesn't help me all that much. But like, the feedback was just non-existent. It was just none. It's weight. It's all the feedback is. It's just weight. It's like your wheel heavy.
Yeah,
Force feedback.
force feedback.
Like the Ian Bell stamp of approval. Your wheel heavy.
Mm.
Yeah, it was not as fun as I remember it being. Like, I drove around for like 30 minutes, and it's like, this just isn't even fun, and just backed out. It's like, nah, I don't even want to do this anymore. I don't even think I made it 30 minutes. Maybe it was like 15 or 20, but yeah, it just wasn't as fun to drive or anything like that anymore. And then I remember Project Cars 1 being fun. I have yet to re-drive it, especially again on a direct drive or anything like that, like with new equipment. But I remember, like, distinctly what I remember is, funny enough, Brands Hatch the circuit. You did it in the fog with a light rain in the aerial atom.
Oh lord, that's a combination.
One of the most fun combos on any sim racing game I've ever had. Like, that atom, it was visceral, it was fast. I mean, you know, you'd like, what, it was like, I can't remember what it had. I know it had a V8 in it with a ton of horsepower. Way too much torque, all rear wheel, and it weighed freaking nothing. And yeah, and that was one of the things I was really sad in Project Cars 2 that was gone, was the aerial atom, because it was legitimately, it was my favorite car in Project Cars 1. And specifically taking it to Brands Hatch with the light rain and the fog, it was amazing to drive. It was so much fun. Like, you were constantly on the edge of control.
Yeah, the combinations were good. Because you could just put in snow or ice or whatever and take the wrong car to the Nürburgring and then have a 40-minute lap time and just have a bit of fun. Well, not 40, but a ridiculous lap time. You take I don't know what, but just anything. I think, well, obviously, the old Winter Series we used to do on that.
I know we would always take the GTE cars. Those are always fun there. Because they didn't have ABS.
Yeah,
Right?
so it was
you
dreadful.
on the traction control to prevent the wheel spin, but you had no ABS.
You couldn't
could not
stop.
prevent yourself from locking up.
Yeah.
But I remember that we would also sometimes just disable the traction control too. Like, it was fun.
Yeah, good luck. Yeah, I think the creativity of Project Car games were good. You could just, you just have fun.
If only they were better.
Never gonna happen.
But
Well, Project Cars 4 might come out one day. Maybe. I don't know.
yeah, I think it's always gonna become grid.
There's whatever Bell is making now.
I don't know. Cody seems to just buy things and kill things ever since they got bought by EA.
Yeah, it's fallen downhill.
Like, things. I mean, Cody's was never great, but like ever since Codemasters stopped with like the Toka series, and they went to just Formula One and Dirt, and those were their two games, it really just went way downhill. In my opinion.
Yeah, well, they ruined the Dirt series. I mean, Dirt 2.0 is fine, but like Dirt 5 and all that is.
See, I didn't even like 2.0. I mean, I want to retry 2.0 with the direct drive. but I did not.
I think it's good fun.
Like Dirt Rally 1, and granted, I think part of it is the fact that I don't like the courses in Dirt Rally 2 all that much. They're all just, they feel very slow and sluggy and annoying to drive.
I think that's the
Like-
point in Rally, to be honest.
Yeah, but like my favorite part of Dirt Rally was Pikes Peak.
Yeah.
Like I loved going to the old Pikes Peak on the gravel and running that old Audi and just flying up the hill. Like that was so much fun because like you're sitting there, you're sliding, and you're just you're turning the wheel left to right to left to right to left to right while you're going in a straight line on the side of a mountain, doing 140, 150 mile an hour. Like that's the fun part of rally for me is like you're right on that limit all the time. Where like in the slow tracks, you just don't feel like as if you're on as much of a limit. Like you feel like you're more just handbrake turning consistently. And it's just, I don't know. For me, it became a lot less fun at that point.
No, that's fair enough. Meantime, 22 Rusumov into the pits means he's lost a place to Perkins as he rejoins. So, unsure about that one. Well, he did come in early, didn't he? First 20 minutes of the race, actually. So that would make sense.
Fourth pit stop, actually.
Yeah, so not going well for 22, and they are quite a margin off the back of the 73, actually. So, yeah, that's unfortunate for them. I don't think they'll be getting that back anytime soon.
Yeah, for sure a bad day for the OPR crew. He's now had 2 DNFs and 8th place now for Rusumov after starting up front but getting in that early contact and incident. Phillips got the fast lap of the race. I just noticed that. At 124.47.
Yeah, it's been pretty close between those two up front. And
Consistently faster has been Phillips. I've been kind of monitoring their times. He's been a half second or more quicker pretty consistently. But again, it's the gap is insurmountable.
yeah.
You're not going to catch a full minute on somebody in an hour. It just isn't going to happen. You would need literally 2.5 seconds a lap to close that gap. And here at 20 minutes to go, yeah, I mean at least 2.5, 3 seconds a lap to close that gap. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, not happening at all.
Insurmountable. These drivers are all too close to each other to have that big of a gap.
Yeah, and the leader is gonna pretty soon lap our third place driver, and that pretty much sums it up really. In the space of almost 100 minutes to lap almost the entire field it's very impressive. But we are coming into those dying stages of the race. Serrano looks like he's sort of closing in on Zlatnik, but not by a major amount. Was 9/10 of a second quicker that previous lap, but I think that was just a overly poor lap from the Aston Martin that previous time around. So not too sure if the 77 can catch or not.
Valentin Chupanov's Ferrari here, the 583, it is not in good condition at the moment. That thing is...
It's in worse condition now. After that.
Yeah.
That is...
Bumping into the wall there does not make anything easier, and that car is just...
unhappy.
Yeah.
Its face is sad. Like, it has
it's a $700,000 train wreck, basically, right now.
It's a sad looking car, unfortunately, and clear suspension damage as well on that, and hopefully they stay out the way. Yeah, I think they're staying off track. Yep, oh, there's the indicator go. There we go, flashing to the right. Lovely stuff, thank you. And then, yeah, I'm sure that car is going to be brought in for the repairs.
I would just put it on the truck.
Put it on the truck. Oh,
Actually,
can we make it through? We can make it through. Yeah, that must be a tricky chicane with heavy suspension damage. That must be really difficult.
Hey, they're driving the fast lane. Look at that. Oh,
Look at
no,
that.
no.
Well,
They did it. They did it for 20 feet.
a little bit. There we go. Yeah, unfortunate for Dupanov there. Obviously not getting the balance right in that Ferrari. It's been seems to have been a tricky one to handle today. And the Porsche using the indicator as well. Thank you, Jennings. There, going to the right hand side out turn 1, letting the leader through, using that indicator. Very kind. Thank you very much. I am pleasantly surprised by our drivers today.
Barring everyone running into each other in the first 15 minutes.
Well, yeah, I mean, it happens. New Year's blues, I'm going to put that down to. Just got to shake it off a little.
I like I don't know how I did it or what I did in particular, but I managed to edit camera 3 and camera 4. I think it was from one of the third-party apps I installed and uninstalled, but it like rewrote the positions for onboard 3 and onboard 4, and it made them into bumper cams, like right on the front bumper and rear bumper, or splitter, I should say. And so like it really gives a good sense of speed, and I absolutely love it. And it's interesting looking at it from this like front splitter view of the McLaren whenever they're coming down or onto the back straightaway, and you start to see like the bridge. The bridge is actually partly below the ground at the start of the back straight, and then by the time that you get to the point where you can see it, then you just dip straight down.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. The like it shows the elevation change really well, like just how drastic it really is.
You should try walking around the place. It's awful. Like
Yeah,
you get
well,
you get a
that's
decent
the-
workout if you do the entire track walk.
Yeah, how does like fan like what is the fan experience like here? Like how do you get to go around? Like where can you go?
You can go around the entire infield of the track, and that includes the GP loop as well. So there is a path which runs around the entire north section of the track on the inside, and that gets you very close, to be fair, especially at the top of the backstretch. That gets you pretty close. That's a good place to watch. But oof, and the 73 almost ran to the back of the 77 there, coming out turn 1. But for the Indy circuit, it's just like any other racetrack. You got decent grandstands, decent facilities, everything's paved, everything's quite nice, wheelchair accessible, all that. It's decent. It's only when you go up into the forest where you start going on like stone pathways and stuff like that. But you've got 2 bridges, one coming out of, well, obviously you can see the 2 bridges, I guess, which link up the circuit pretty well, which means you don't have to walk around the entire circuit if you want to get somewhere. But it's good. It's just obviously the only shame is when you're on the GT day, when you're using the full layout, the cars disappear for half a minute until they come back. You've got no way of seeing them unless you're in front of a big screen. Whereas if you go to Donington, you can see pretty much 90% of the track from 90% of the track. No matter where you are, you've got a decent vantage point of most of the track.
Yeah, I would say for like my comparison, like Road America here in the U.S., it kind of reminds me of that in a sense with this track. Like the elevation change is huge, right? It's for walking purposes. Like my legs were dead after the day at Road America. It was awful.
Yeah. Well, it's a
'Cause, like,
big
what-
place though, isn't it? Like that's spread out.
Yeah, massive. And that's the thing too, is like, you're talking about here, like, they go off into the trees and they disappear for 30 seconds.
That's the thing.
Road
It's not
America,
that.
they go off into the trees, they're gone for 2 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Brands is self-contained as well. Obviously, the first sector is tiny. It comes back on itself, which really helps for pedestrian miles. It's great because that track isn't going anywhere. It's coming back to itself. It is only the GP loop where if you want to explore, you can. You're going to be going for a bit, and you're going to be going through random trails. You can go through their winter rally section if you want to cross over parts of it as well, which is kind of fun. So there are some other routes, but it's going to be rocky and stuff. But yeah, I guess that's the same there. So if you want to go explore, you're gonna have to go places.
Yeah, I mean, in Road America, like, you know, with the forest aspect too, like, you can go like just walking through like the bushes and the trees and such. Like, you just start walking through them, and so you can kind of just, you know, get lost out in the woods there. And then obviously there's a trail that follows the entire length of the racetrack along the infield of it that you can walk. And with Road America, there's the turn 4 up to turn 5, like steep hill where the Corvette bridge is, and literally you can walk straight up that. Like, it's just a hill. You just walk straight up. There's a path there, or there's another path they have that's more for wheelchair, where it's kind of saws back and forth. And up at the top of that hill, they have a little restaurant there. And so, like, if you want to go to that restaurant, you have to climb up that hill. But it's quite, I would say, similar in that aspect, though, where like you can kind of go wherever you want, but obviously here, like you say, the track much more self-contained, a much quicker lap, much smaller lap, so you kind of get lost quicker. But also, aren't there houses not too far from this track, like in the back section?
Yes, so going down into the final corner, there are houses which just have a fence, and then there's the track. Like, I've been there on the spectator side, and there's one house which is obviously a motorsport kind of fanatic place, because they've built this sort of almost like a viewing platform, I'm going to call it. Like, they've gone, there's a racetrack there. If I want to watch it, I want to watch it nice. So they sort of, built this platform where they can just sort of sit, and they've got the protection that Brands Hatch have put there, and they've just sort of built, not over it, but just sort of higher up, so they don't have to deal with the fence. It's great. So, yeah, some people do like it. It's obviously got no chance of being Rockingham, this place, so it's not going anywhere. But in terms of its actual location, yeah, it's next to a village, or maybe like a small town, but that's really it. It's just sort of in the middle of nowhere, a bit like most racetracks, to be honest.
Okay, I'm kind of looking at it here, like in the free cam on ACC, and yeah, so yeah, there is a little, like, it shows on the satellite view, there's like a little village just outside, like you're saying, on the final corner, like kind of towards the back few corners. You can kind of see that there's a village there, but yeah, generally in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, there's like 2-3 houses which are just onto the back of the circuit, and at least one of them, when I was there last, that was a fair few years ago though, like chopped down the trees and just built this sort of area for them to watch from. And it's like, yeah, that's how you do it.
Yeah, I know at Road America there's the town of like Elkhart Lake, but it's like a mile and a half down the road. In terms of directly adjoining the racetrack, there is nothing. There is no, like, across the streets, there's like a condo housing complex kinda. But it's like across the parking lots, and then across the street, and then through some trees, and then to it. So it's still probably like a half mile from the nearest point of the racetrack.
Yeah.
So like it very much feels isolated there. But it is interesting. Like it would be kind of cool to be able to, like, you know, purchase that property and just be at the racetrack.
Just be there, yeah. Yeah, I think we've done quite okay with our racing circuits, because they were all mostly built on manor houses, you know, ones which have got these nice long drives which go around stuff. So Brands Hatch, obviously this was in a country club, has no opposition apart from the town. Donington was built on someone's manor, and then when there was opposition, they went, nah, let's build an airport. Complain about that, I dare you. And then they didn't, and then, well, Donington has no effect over literal airplanes, so that's fine. The closest thing to Snetterton is an industrial estate next to a motorway, and then Alton Park is in, well, a park and is surrounded by a lake. So no opposition there. It's really, honestly, was Rockingham, which was right next to a city centre anyway. To be fair, it was kind of close, and then cities are always going to grow, and there was free real estate literally right next to it, so they built houses, which is and that's how that went. But everything else, honestly, pain to get to in the UK if you want to go to a racetrack, because they're all just in the middle of nowhere, apart from Donington, which is next to an airport. All the others.
Your guys' middle of nowhere means you have to drive like 25 minutes to get there.
Yeah, really far, man.
2.5 hours from the nearest town.
True.
like literally, Road America to the nearest airport is 2 hours.
Yeah.
And then to the nearest towns, like in terms of like a big like kind of city, if you will, where like it's not like Elkhart Lake where it's a bunch of people who have $4.5 million houses on a lake, where like okay, you actually have like a proper like you're running like a Walmart or whatever, like your version of a big box store. You're 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And so like it's in the middle of nowhere, and really the exceptions are where the city built into the track, like you're saying, like Daytona or Indy or those kind of facilities, like primarily ovals, where the city built into the oval or into the racetrack, and the track is a big part of the funding of the town. Like the city of Indianapolis makes a lot of money off of Indianapolis Motor Speedway, right? And so they have no reason to not protect it. Whereas, Laguna is seeing the unfortunate opposite side effects of that, where people are bringing money to the area that Laguna is in, thus Laguna is being pushed down in exchange for the money that people are bringing. And so, it's getting those limited days and stuff like that for use because of the fact that everyone else brings more money than the racetrack does. And so I'm sure that there's extents of that where it's like, having it in the middle of nowhere is good because it means that you can kind of just use the track and you don't got to worry about it. But then eventually, people are going to build to it.
People are going to come, yeah.
They're going to go spend $5 million to build a house right next door and then say, why did you build next to my house? No, you built your house next to me. Go away. Of all the land in the world, you chose next to a racetrack. That's your own fault.
Well, it's like with the hill climb next to me, so they are limited, but I think they're limited to 20 weekends a year. But they're a hill climb. They don't even use all 20. I think it's actually more. Like they have like 6 events a year. It's hilarious because it's someone's driveway. Like that's what it is. There are 2 houses on this hill climb, and at some point 115 years ago, whoever owned it went, this is kind of fun to drive quickly. Who else wants to go? And that's genuinely how it came to be. And that's what it is now. And they
same thing.
Yeah, just privately owned, bit of road. Sometimes
into the wall.
Oof.
Sorexi just
Rare mistake.
Coming off of turn 3 there, got into the grass, kind of shook it up, and then just went nose into the inside wall in between 3 and 4.
Some damage on the front right there, but I mean 63's going into turn 1. I guess just maybe got complacent, maybe. I mean, poor guy's probably been a little bit bored in this race. Figured final 5 minutes, let's spice it up.
I mean, for their sake, there's not too much damage to that car, but
yeah, the front's dropped down, but that's it. Oh, wide through there. I think for the telltale for ACC is there a gap in the front bumper, which there is, which I think indicates a bit more of a larger bit of damage that they've sustained. But there's no, I wouldn't say there's any suspension or mechanical. It's just that front end which is detached. But get a box? No, but it seems slow for the front corner. We'll have to see for this next lap.
Box at any point.
Oh, I mean, 5 minutes, isn't it?
If you hit, you're immediately sacrificing.
Here we go. 30 seconds was the gap. 5 minutes. here's some tension. It's like Drive to Survive, Netflix. Fake tension, let's go. What can the 63 do? Absolutely nothing, to be fair. Closest gap on track is Serrano, who's actually been able to half that gap last time I mentioned them. From 17 seconds to just under 10.
I just realized that.
Yes, they did swap driver. I forgot to mention that. They are the only driver swapping pair today. I did forget to mention that.
I mean, there was 15 seconds lost in that lap for that wreck. So
Yeah.
a 140.6 was a lap time versus the 25s that they were running. So 15-second loss. Now we really get to see here just how much is lost in terms of performance. Once again, missing apexes. Off in the grass again, man. I mean, it's obviously there's some lackluster grip there in McLaren.
Yeah, and if there was 40 minutes to go, maybe they'd come in and do something about it, but 4 minutes to go, yeah, certainly not going to bother, because even if you are losing 5 seconds a lap, it doesn't matter. The gap is too large. They've done the work for this race. They've put in the effort, put in the good miles and the good laps, and whilst the 63 made the blunder at the very start of this race, it's left the 54 to bring this one to fifth at 128.2. I mean, it's not slow. It's only a few seconds.
It's about 2.5 seconds slower that they lost, but also you do compare it to some of the guys down the field who are also running 28s. It's kind of a
it's not horrendous. It's not not race losing pace, not at all. Gap now 63 coming across the line, looking at 25. So although that gap has dramatically shortened, certainly not enough for a position change at all. 3 minutes to go, 2 more laps. 3 more laps.
Maybe we need one more kind of off-track excursion here. For
Yeah, just one more will do.
Yeah.
Go on, you know you want to, David.
It's kind of, just kind of nose into the grass a little bit. Maybe do some donuts.
Don't have to lose the lead, just make it closer.
Maybe think it's the final lap, pull over, go do some donuts, and then realize it wasn't the last lap.
I don't know if you saw that in the Formula Regional last week, but that was funny at Dubai Circuit.
Would that happen in real life?
Yeah, last week. This poor guy, I think it was Gabriel Mini, defending to someone else, drove second place to the wall, Barrichello style, and came across the line, thought they'd won the race by 200ths of a second, slowed down, finished like 9th. After they realised, after going through like the second, third corner, going, damn, not finished.
Man, that's rough.
It's really rough.
I would fire my crew chief.
Yeah, it's a shame because that would have been a really good finish, but then they just slowed down and were thinking, yo, you're not done yet. Carry on.
Were they not told over the radio, hey, this is the light?
I don't know, there must, I guess, miscommunication or something, but the last lap board was shown right in front of their face, so I don't know how they missed it.
We over our radio calls, we call okay, this is gonna be 2 to go, okay, this is white flag, there's the white being displayed,
yeah, do it the same in karting when we come to the end of the stint. I don't know, 5 more laps, 1 more lap, hand up, in you come. Exactly the same karting. I don't know why they can't do that, but hey ho, happens. It was funny.
Radios, you can
yeah.
You can call it over the radio and specifically tell them, hey, white flag being displayed now, or hey, this is the last lap, because I know that in Europe you guys don't still use white flag for the final lap.
No, we do not.
Hey, this is the final lap. Then you don't have the problem of slowing down, and then you call checkered flag. You don't slow down until we call you checkered.
Yeah.
If we call you checkered, then you slow down.
Is a bit peculiar, but happens. Happens. But we are on the final lap now, as we have had that call out over the radio. So this one is correct, and coming up to turn 2 for the final time, that gap 20 odd seconds to the 63. So maybe a lightning strike or something would be the only reason that 63 would win, but no, it's been an almost lights to flag victory for the 54 bar 2-3 laps from the 63.
Yeah, I think it was 2 laps during the pit cycle there at the midway point where Phillips did manage to jump in and lead a couple laps, but yeah, no, I mean, it's been just purely dominant, simply put. Again, obviously, the blunder of the pit lane start. That is a stop go 30 for the 583. Just
Oof.
ensure
Insight
they
into
finish
injury.
last. And they just want to make sure they finish last on the track.
Yeah, unfortunately. And yeah, maybe Phillips. I mean, Phillips has had the pace. We saw that in qualifying as well. So there could have been a very good battle for the lead, but yeah, as you say, immediately squashed before the race even begun, with them being held in the pits. But through the final corner, for the final time, then the 54 McLaren, 2 hours of racing, and almost lights the flag. But I was going to say not a foot wrong, but you can see by the damage there on the front, a foot was put wrong at some point, but it certainly wasn't enough to dispel them from the victory, which over the other 1 hour and 55 minutes thoroughly deserved. They've done a fantastic job. There will be a second place then for Phillips, the 63. One of the quickest cars on track. In fact, setting the quickest lap of the race. So they possibly could have contended for the win had they not had that pre-race blunder. Fourth place then, the 33, Keishon Hall, who was defending valiantly against the 63. Could have, possibly should have come third himself. Mistake in between the pit stop phases means he comes fourth. There's an O from Case somewhere. What happened?
Well, you gotta wonder if that defending from Keishon Hall
Cost him as well.
Cost Phillips that shot at the win. If you think about it, I mean, it was six or so laps at nearly 2 seconds a lap, at least a second a lap. That Phillips was slowed. I mean, you're looking at, it could be anywhere from 6 to 15 seconds that they were slowed down. And, you take that away, now you're looking only a couple seconds on the gap, and maybe then Phillips pushes a bit harder and gets up there and gets the shot. So Keishon Hall kind of aiding the win there for Sorexi.
Indeed, yeah, hindsight is a wonderful thing, and yeah, finally across the line then, third place. The number 30, Jennings, and everyone's having a bit of a fiesta down at the end of turn 1. And yeah, there we go. So, beautiful win there by Shareski, 54, McLaren, 16 seconds the gap in the end, of course losing a bit of time at the end with that damage. Of course, third place then going to the number 30 Porsche as well, but that'll have it. First race of the year booked off.
There was definitely lots of excitement around the race, despite it maybe not being the most intense battle there at the end. There was a lot of excitement throughout the race, and obviously the intensity of the chaos there towards the start with the incidents that were occurring, really just dividing up the lead. And again, right out of the gate, before the green lights even went out, we immediately had the pit lane start, which put a whole wrench into things. And really making that event a unique one, that's for sure. Definitely a very GRG.
That was a very... No red flags, though, which was lovely. At least we didn't have to deal with that this time. But
server restarts.
No server issues this time, no. But yeah, very GRG event indeed. But join us next time on the 25th of February for the 2 hours of Zolder, round 2 of 6 then in this GT Championship. And yeah, it'll be a fun one. Hopefully we'll stream that. Case will be on the road, vibing with the Supras. But if not, it'll be me. If not, I'll steal someone else from GRG. But yeah, that was a good race. Thank you all for driving or checking out the stream. We'll hopefully see you again soon.
Bye for now.
Adios.